Welcome back to another FPL deadline stream. This time, ahead of Gameweek 27, I have made a slight captaincy change and it's not fully locked in. The same goes for my squad because I've got one free transfer. I haven't made any moves just yet. And I've got several options which I'll show you in this poll, which kind of summarizes what I talked about in yesterday's team selection. There was a double upload with the best wildcard squad as well. And the transfer tips on Thursday provided you the ultimate coverage for the upcoming deadline. But I'll also do that in this stream, providing a sort of one-stop shop and an ultimate guide. So you've got all the clean sheet odds, predicted lineups, top 10 captains, and also a lot of specific team questions as well. Talking about the captaincy, chip strategy, everything will be addressed in this particular stream. Drop a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, click the hype button on YouTube, and also share this with those that love FPL and UCL Fantasy, and there will be more content for the Champions League very soon after an incredible week, at least for me personally, and it was a very high-scoring match day with over 110 points. That Anthony Gordon captain was definitely by far the best I've had in quite a while, but that wasn't really the case in FPL, with Gabriel as my captain, a bit standard and boring, but I didn't triple captain him, and my plan is to use that chip when Man City double, and that could be in Gameweek 36, and that could also be Crystal Palace and Brentford at home. I think that looks like a fairly decent double on paper. But let's get straight into your questions as always, and Sam says, Timber to Mukiele, Rice to Wirtz, Enzo to Dewsbury Hall, Krupa to Joao Pedro for a -4. I like the Joao Pedro move. Despite Chelsea's fixtures turning for the worse fairly soon after this Burnley game, I still think Joao Pedro is worth the investment, but Dewsbury Hall's decent. I just don't like selling Enzo to him particularly, but I understand it. I also don't see a need to do Rice to Wirtz, to be honest. As much as I like Wirtz for the next couple of weeks on paper, I'd probably keep Declan Rice and avoid the -4 hit. So maybe Timber to Mukiele, Enzo to Dewsbury Hall, if you need that for the funds to do Krupa Jr. to Joao Pedro, Sam. And doing that for free would be quite decent. You can always buy Wirtz for free later on if you want to before blank Gameweek 31. Joao Pedro is scary this week, and I'm finally leading my mini league. The number 2 guy has Pedro as captain this week, which looks very tempting to neutralise. Yeah, but you want to play your own game as well, right? And after Burnley at home, Joao Pedro faces Arsenal and Aston Villa away. If you back him to do well in those matches, then that's fair enough, but I don't think his ceiling is particularly high for the next 3 game weeks overall. Need to do something because he has Ekitike, Pedro Hallen up front. So yeah, I think my suggestion would probably stay the same. Just avoiding the Rice to Wirtz transfer for a -4 hit if you really want Joao Pedro. You don't have to captain him, but I understand your attempts at neutralising your opponent. Can't stand Enzo playing so deep. Don't trust him, that's the thing. Totally different when Palmer's on the pitch. He has played a bit of a different role on the left as well, and you'd rather him play in a central area, particularly just behind the striker, but in recent matches, that seems to be the case where Palmer's taken the bulk of the big chances. He's on penalties and Enzo has been a bit sidelined, but I still think Enzo has something to offer and I wouldn't be in a rush to sell him this week. But against Aston Villa and Arsenal, something I discussed in my team selection was selling Enzo to Antoine Semenyo. Instead of doing Wilson to Semenyo this week, I could just wait until the next one, keep Wilson and sell Enzo Fernandez instead. So I understand your point of view. Jubert the guy says, hi Dylan. What 2 should I bench out of Bowen, Senesi, Semenyo, Anderson? I would not be benching Semenyo in this scenario, that's for sure. I think it's probably going to be Senesi and Anderson in this case. And the thing with Anderson is he can always offer you a sort of baseline score of 4 to 5 points, but that's probably what I would do. Who to start out of Alderete or Hill? I'd probably go for Alderete this week. I think Sunderland have a better chance of a clean sheet than Bournemouth. I think West Ham could get a result against the Cherries. Wilson or Rice is difficult as well, but I would lean towards starting Rice and benching Wilson. Mo Salah's performances during Ramadan for the last couple of years have been underwhelming. Well, this season, in general, he has been quite underwhelming as well. He's not worth that price tag, but a couple of goal contributions in the last couple of matches. But yeah, I just don't think Salah's worth the investment right now. I thought he might have been as a sort of differential play, but that hasn't really been the case. Bench Timber or Gay? I think it's more likely... Well, that's a tough one. Arsenal are slightly ahead in the clean sheet odds. And I've gone for 2-0 Arsenal. I don't know why, after what they did the other night, which we won't speak of. But I'm going to say Timber, which probably isn't great advice, but that's just based on my scoreline predictions, and I want to be consistent with that. But Man City have an incredible record against Newcastle. I've gone for 3-1 in that game, but it could easily be 3-0, and Gay keeps the clean sheet. I don't really blame you. I wouldn't blame you if you started Gay instead. So that's a very close one. If you have Gabriel already, then I would be open to starting Gay and diversifying your defensive line a little bit, but it's all team dependent. Julian says, what's up, Dylan? Hope all's good. Likewise, I had Raya, Gabriel, Canate, Gay, Bruno Fernandes, Mbumo, Rogers, Wirtz, Rice, Haaland, Joao Pedro. On the bench, Dubravka, Mukiele, Kripke Jr. and Goodmanson. Would you roll with one free transfer? Potentially. I think in your case, even Mukiele could be started, but it's difficult to bench one of those players, so I understand why you've done it. And even Kripke Jr. could start against West Ham and do fairly well, so that looks quite handy. I think I'd roll in your situation. Welcome, Baraf. I have 2 free transfers. Would you do Tarkowski to Kanate or Timber to Van Dijk this week? I'd rather do Timber to Van Dijk, and you can always sell Tarkowski to Munoz, but I think if you don't do it this week, you probably have to wait until after Gameweek 31 potentially. So yeah, Tarkowski could still be held on to, even Timber, but I like the Van Dijk move. Yes, Banjo, I'm ready for it. Will I get it? Let's find out after the break. Whoa. Pause. That's all I'm going to say to that one. Hola Dylan, which is the best way to get Thiago for Gameweek 28? Munoz and DCL / Coyote plus Thiago, or Palmer and Ndai? Whoa, that's a lot of different scenarios, mate. I can't lie, I'm losing track of it. Semenyo and Rogers, Thiago. Whoa. What? Okay, let's break this down a little bit. I think from everything you've said, which is very extensive, my favourites would be Semenyo, Rogers, Thiago. Welcome, Banjo, and thank you very much. As he says, like and subscribe. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. Also, is the best pick Vandenberg, Coyote, or Ajer? Not a big fan of any of them, to be fair, but if I had to pick one, it's probably going to be Vandenberg. Need to bench just one of Virgil, Chalobah, Timber, Rice, Enzo, and Boomer, or Thiago. Not easy, but I think Timber has the lowest ceiling, and he has been performing quite poorly recently, so it's going to be Timber in this case. Now, I've actually gone for a draw in the Forest-Liverpool game, and I'm a bit conflicted about that because originally I went for a narrow Liverpool win, but I just think Van Dijk has a higher ceiling, more DEFCON potential, bonus points, so it's probably between those two, Virgil or Timber to bench, but I'd probably bench Timber. I think 6 points is probably the maximum you'll get from him. I'd happily be proven wrong, by the way, especially if I end up keeping him. Sold Rogers for Buendia. Is it a good? No, I don't think so. I think Rogers is a better option. He got 15 points against Leeds in the reverse fixture. Not saying he's going to do that again, but I'd be a bit cautious about that. When is the best time to use triple captain? So I referenced it earlier in this stream and also across many of my recent videos. I think Gameweek 36, which is when City will likely double against Brentford and Palace at home, that's where I'll probably put the triple captaincy on Erling Haaland, but there's no guarantee that will be the double game week. It could be in 33, or I've even seen some sort of projections of Gameweek 32. I'm not so sure about that one, but yeah, once it's confirmed, I'll let you know, and you will know and have the information by watching my content. But yeah, I think when Man City double, that would be the time to use it. Hi Dylan, Captain Joao Pedro, Haaland. In my captaincy ranking, I've got Haaland slightly above him, so I'm going to stick with that. But Palmer is number 1 for me this week, and you're going to see my top 10 list very soon. Bench Kripke or Rice, it's close. I think Kripke might have the highest ceiling this week, to be fair, but Rice is a brilliant all-round asset, big game player. So I don't think Tottenham and Chelsea are necessarily bad fixtures for him. But I think this week I would lean towards Kripke Jr. to start. It's a very close one. Benching Kripke or DCL, I would bench Calvert-Lewin. I think Aston Villa will win. There's no guarantee Calvert-Lewin starts, even though I have seen multiple predicted lineups with Calvert-Lewin in there. And I've gone for a sort of narrow Villa win, 2-1, but I don't see Leeds scoring many goals at Villa Park, to be fair. And I just think West Ham Bournemouth could be quite high scoring. So yeah, that kind of explains it quite a lot. Which players to surely get in before blank Gameweek 31? Well, I still like Semenyo, despite the fact that he blanks in 31, but it's kind of awkward because Chelsea, for example, they've got a great fixture this week, but then some very tough ones like Arsenal and Villa away back-to-back, but I still like Palmer and Joao Pedro. I think Igor Thiago facing Burnley away in Gameweek 28 looks fairly handy, so these are the sorts of players I would recommend, but a lot of them were also talked about in my Transfer Tips podcast. Morgan Rogers would be one of my favourite options to buy this week. Ali says neck hurts. Well, hopefully you get well soon, but I'm not a chiropractor, I'm not going to lie to you. I see a lot of triple captain Gabriel last double game week feel disappointing about Arsenal performance. Yeah, you were pushing that boat quite a lot before the deadline, I remember that. Triple captaining a defender, even double game week, a genius move. Well, if this was earlier in the season, I think it would have made a lot of sense because Arsenal, in an entire month, conceded no goals across all competitions. But I have seen vulnerabilities defensively in the Gunners, and we saw that against Brentford and Wolves. But even before that deadline, the Game Week 26, we saw that on so many occasions. The 3-2 loss against Manchester United, and there's something missing from the Arsenal defence. And as a unit, I think there's just something not quite right with how Arsenal are playing and controlling games, and the consistency in the Premier League has been lackluster. 2 wins out of 7, and they have opened the door of a title race, which was kind of unnecessary, but I'm not too surprised, to be fair. So, yeah, with Gabriel triple captain, I don't think it was a terrible move or like a horrific decision, but I was quite consistent about that in my videos and that deadline stream. I was just never really feeling it myself, and I thought they would keep a clean sheet against Wolves and concede against Brentford, but unfortunately they conceded in both matches and let a 2-0 lead slip. So, yeah, I think with Gabriel Magalhaes, good FPL asset, still the best defender in the game, but for a triple captaincy, I'm always going to lean towards an Erling Haaland type figure. Feremi says, my team, Pope, Dubravka, Munoz, Gabriel, Timber, Alderete, 3.8 defender, Bruno Guimaraes, Bruno Fernandes and Dye, Rogers, Rice, Krupi, Haaland, Joao Pedro. Yeah, the big priority there is Bruno Guimaraes. He's out for 8 to 10 weeks, so he's the first one to sell. With 1.1 million in the bank, what could you do? Well, you could go to Antoine Semenyo. Now, he does blank in 31, but if you've got the free available, then that could easily be navigated. And even with free transfers, for example, you can start trimming down your Arsenal assets. You've got a triple up, admittedly, but Timber to Van Dijk could work fairly well for you with blank gimmick 31 in mind as well. But the priority for you would have to be selling Bruno Guimaraes, and my favourite midfielder to buy at the moment, because you've already got Bruno and Rogers in your team, would probably be Antoine Semenyo. Saeed says, hey Dylan, start 1, Timber, Mukiele, Wilson or Garner. I have Rofs as goalkeeper. It'd probably be Wilson here, but Timber's a close second. Is Buendia a good, cheap Villa pick? He's okay, but I just wouldn't sell Rogers to him, to be honest, which is what you did. Gunnar Holmes says, dear oh dear Dylan, Captain Haaland or Semenyo? It's going to be Haaland. There are rumours surrounding that Semenyo could be benched. I haven't seen that, so that's probably something that surfaced this morning. I'll have a look. But if you have a link to those particular rumours, then that would be greatly appreciated, because I want to verify the source myself. So yeah, let's have a look. Yeah, I haven't seen anything about Semenyo being benched, so if anyone has seen it, drop a link and we can go through it. And also like this stream, subscribe, all that good stuff. And thank you to those that have done so already. Hi Dylan, should I captain Bruno Fernandes or Haaland? It's a very close one between those two this week, but I do have Haaland ranked slightly higher in my Camsey list. And with the yellow flag removed, I'm quite bullish on Erling Haaland. But if I had every player in the game at my disposal, I think Palmer would be my captain, and he is number 1 in the list overall. And Julian says, I'm leaning towards Joao Pedro captain. That's fair enough. He's in my top 3, I believe. He's ranked very highly this week. Hi, Dylan. Bench 1 defender and 1 midfielder. Munoz, Mukiele, Senesi, Dewsbury Hall, Enzo, Harry Wilson. I would bench Senesi and probably Dewsbury Hall. I'd definitely start Enzo and Munoz, and I'd probably go for Mukiele. I think the toughest question is one of Wilson or Dewsbury Hall to the bench, but I'd probably start Wilson here. The thing is, you do have a clash between him and Mukiele, so logically speaking, I think Dewsbury Hall starting would make sense for you. I have gone for 1-0 Sunderland in my predictions, so yeah, probably bench Wilson, but I'm very conflicted about that one, as you can tell. Pick 2, Hill, Elliot Anderson, Joachim Anderson and Richards. I'd go for Richards and, oddly enough, probably Elliot Anderson. I think 4 to 5 points is likely. MMK says, hey Dylan, I'm thinking whether to sell Bowen and Rice for Ekitike and Rayan. What do you think? Makes sense. I still like Declan Rice, to be fair, but if you're navigating blank Gemic 31 without the free hit, then it's plausible to sell Declan Rice, and he's got Tottenham and Chelsea up next, so you could argue his ceiling won't be that high. But in fact, for Declan Rice, in the reverse fixture of his 4 upcoming opponents, he produced some good returns there. We're talking about 5 points or more in every single game. So selling Rice could backfire, to be fair, but I understand it. And I think Ekitike is an upgrade on Bowen, but there's a reason why I sold Ekitike, to be fair, last week, although that was accidental, to be fair. The plan was always to sell Ekitike at one stage, ideally sooner than I did, but timing is so important. But I think with Ekitike, he has been very inconsistent over the past 2 months. Thank God I listened to your advice and didn't triple captain Gabriel. Yeah, good rank though, and you've got the triple captaincy chip still available, but yeah, I could see Erling Haaland demolishing that 7-pointer later in the season, but football is full of surprises. Good to see you. I'll call you Juan, as we said before. Yeah, Rodgers' captain is interesting. He's in my top 5. You're going to see that list very soon again. It was delved into in my team selection video yesterday, but it's looking good. Keith says, morning Dylan, is Palmer the best option this week for captain? I believe so. Not definitively. He's not like the outright favourite and far better than the rest, but I think Palmer is probably the best captain overall. Not sure whether to captain him, Haaland or Bruno. Yeah, I understand that. I think even Joao Pedro being added to the mix, those are the top 4 options overall. But the way I've got it ranked, if I'm not mistaken, is Palmer first, Haaland second, Bruno third, Joao Pedro fourth, and Rodgers in 5th. Morning, I have a dilemma. Can you help me start 2 and bench 1? Yeah, a lot of benching dilemmas this week. So Dango, Krupi, and Senesi. I'd probably bench Senesi here, even though he can get Defcon and give you 3 to 4 points as a baseline score. Dylan, how are Man United's fixtures looking until 32? You're going to see the FDR section fairly soon, so that'll be covered there naturally. Hold or sell Mbeumo to Semenyo? Probably hold Mbeumo. I do like Semenyo though, but I don't think it's worth that sort of switch necessarily. Yeah, I think starting Timber of Senesi is also a logical decision. I think Arsenal are more likely to keep a clean sheet, and that was reflected in the odds I talked about fairly soon in my recent videos. And yeah, I will go for the clean sheet odds as well later in the stream. Jubert says, after this game, should I do Enzo to Rain as a differential? It makes sense. I think Bournemouth, well, they are near the top of the FDR for the next couple of weeks, and Chelsea have terrible fixtures after Burnley, so selling Enzo in 28 is a logical decision, and you also get more money in the process. Timber to Van Dijk this week or wait? I'd probably do it this week if you can. That is one of my possible transfers before the deadline, but I only have 1 free transfer and I could just roll and give myself more flexibility for Gameweek 28 and beyond. I have Foden with enough money to replace for anyone. Keep this game week. I'd probably sell him to Palmer if you can, or, well, Bruno Fernandes if you don't have already. Rodgers, Semenyo. Pick one of those 4 midfielders depending on who you have already. But yeah, I would sell Foden still. Hi Dylan, not convinced with the predicted clean sheet stats of Arsenal and Sunderland. Fair enough, I don't really blame you. Therefore, going to bench Timber over Michele. Well, in my predictions, I've got Arsenal 2-0. We'll see how that goes. And I think 1-0 Sunderland. So, yeah, starting Michele makes sense. And if you've got Gabriel already, I think it's probably worth hedging your bets a little bit. So, that's a good strategy. Juntao says, morning, mate. Bench 2 of Gabriel, Chalobah, O'Reilly, Richards, Anderson from Fulham. I would bench Joachim Anderson and O'Reilly. Good morning. Triple Arsenal, Timber, Gabriel, Saliba, or 2 plus Sepp van den Berg this week, please. I'd diversify it. I wouldn't triple up on Arsenal defensively, considering their recent form. Having said that, I don't think Brentford keep a clean sheet against Brighton, but I think what you probably do here is start Gabriel and Timber alongside Van den Berg. But yeah, I'd probably adjust that defensive line a little bit. You could even do something like Saliba to Van Dijk as a free transfer and then start him instead. Play 2, Rice, Timber, Alderete, Wilson, and Thiago. Yeah, close one here. I'd start Thiago, then it's very mixed, but it's between Rice or Alderete as the second option. I'd probably go for Declan Rice. I triple captain Palmer, decent. It is decent. I'm saving it for a double game week, like potentially 36 if Man City face Brentford and Palace at home. And you might be asking, what about the other chips? Well, my current plan, which is subject to change, is to wildcard in 30 or 32, to free hit in blank game week 31 or 34, with 31 being more probable, and to bench boost in double game week 33, which will likely be the bigger double between that and 36, which is where I would use the triple captaincy on Erling Haaland. Start Timber or Senesi? Probably Timber, despite his recent form. What should I do with Palmer in game week 28, even if he scores a hat-trick today? Probably keep him. If he scores a hat-trick, you're not going to be asking this question after the deadline, believe me. Matthias says Donnarumma, Timber, Gabriel, Richards, Virgil, Bruno Fernandes, Enzo, Elliot Anderson, Zubimendi, Haaland, Joao Pedro, with Dubravka, Voltemada, Bruno Guimaraes, Anderson on the bench. Yeah, I think both Newcastle players are worth selling, despite the interesting role for Nick Voltemada in the Champions League, and we could see that replicated today. I still think it's worth selling both of them, so I completely agree with both transfers you've made. In terms of other midfielders, I'd probably suggest instead of Dango, who is worth mentioning for sure, I think Morgan Rogers would be appealing depending on your budget. Antoine Semenyo. I still like Declan Rice, but in terms of buying him in, it's a bit awkward. So yeah, I'd probably suggest that instead. Voltemada to Thiago, that's the best move you could make in my opinion, and you would then have the best front three in the game. But in terms of the midfield, instead of Dango, I would say either Rogers, Semenyo, or someone along those lines. Even Florian Wirtz could be interesting as well. Thank you, Duarte. Bom dia. Raya, Gabriel, Richards, Chalobah, Joachim Anderson, Rodon, Elliot Anderson, Enzo, Rice, Wilson, Bruno Fernandes, Ekitike, Joao Pedro, Haaland. Roll, or do you suggest any transfer? Probably Raw. Your defensive line looks solid this week. So probably start Gabriel, Richards and Chalobah. In the midfield, yeah, I think Fernandes, Rice, Enzo looks really good, but if you had enough money in the bank, what I would consider is something like Elliot Anderson or Wilson up to Rogers. And something else you could do to fund that move is possibly Ekitike to Thiago, which I think would pay off in the long term. I know Liverpool have great fixtures coming up. You might not want to part ways with him, but that could also be your way of buying Rodgers and putting more money in the midfield, which I think is very important. But in terms of having to make a move this week, not necessarily, but those are some ideas for you if you decide to make use of your free transfers. Could Palmer make a differential in scoring goals that not involving penalty goals? Well, Palmer has scored a lot of penalty goals. He's in good form, but he does rely on them quite a lot. And I said this in his breakout season. He scored 10 penalties in that campaign, but he's a quality player. He offers more than just penalties, but in terms of his goal scoring, that forms a significant part of that output for sure. Should I bench DCL or Cunha? There is a chance Cunha's benched for Manchester United and we see Sesko up front and then Mbeumo, Ahmad and Bruno Fernandes just behind him. So bear that in mind, but between those two, I'd still start Cunha. Hi Dylan, last game week I triple captain Rice and ended up well, 81 points. That's a solid triple captaincy score. I think 14 points is a pretty decent tally. And the triple captaincy in general is quite overrated, but yeah, you got a decent rise and significant gain over those that triple captain Gabriel, that's for sure. And we'll see how Haaland does later this season or whenever people decide to use their chips. Arthur, for example, mentioned Palmer triple captain today, and that could be quite interesting too. Maguire, Timber, Hill, who to start? I'd still go for Timber, which might surprise you, but I think Arsenal have a better chance of a clean sheet than Manchester United and Bournemouth this week. Start to Bowen, Rice and Rodgers. I would start Rice and Rodgers, but Bowen is interesting against Bournemouth. Yeah, there is definitely a case of starting him over Rice. I'm not going to deny that, but Rodgers has to start in my opinion. Before I go to the rest of your questions, I'm going to go for some different screens, and that could also in turn answer even more of your dilemmas, debates and topics. But let's go to the FDR. Man City are top. It does say here that in Gameweek 32 they could double against Palace and Chelsea, but that's just a provisional and potential double. I think Gameweek 36 is the more likely. Brentford, Fulham, Liverpool and Bournemouth complete the top 5. There's also Palace in a decent position there, Aston Villa as well. But if we look at the bottom 5, Wolves, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, Spurs and Leeds, and of course the bottom 2 there are blanking in 31, which is a big reason why they're near the bottom. With predicted points, Haaland is top until, let's change this to Gameweek 32. So Bruno Fernandes is now top with Salah, Haaland, Ekitike, Thiago, Palmer, Mbeumo, Shada, Enzo Fernandez and Ghana, which is interesting. With projected price rises, we could see Rayan, Martinez from Aston Villa, Somerville, Dango Ouattara. I think that's a glitch there, so I'm going to ignore that. Bruno Fernandes, Dewsbury Hall, Krupi Jr., Senesi and Kelleher is also not too far away from a price rise, but in terms of falls, Trossard, Gyökeres, Zubimendi, Foden, also Voltemada, Cherki, Cunha, and Enzo Fernandez. The same goes for Michael Keane from Everton. So I put this poll out on my channel, and it sort of summarized my team selection video from yesterday in terms of transfer plans. So my options are to roll. I've only got one free transfer, and that's leading the vote. Virgil van Dijk is in second to replace either Klein or Jurrien Timber. Wilson to Semenyo is third, and Thiago to Joao Pedro is last. So keep on voting in that poll. I'll also include a link in the live chat right now. And always keep a lookout for the community section and my posts, because you'll get updates to my content, especially if you're a member. And the same goes for patrons on patreon.com/FPL Dylan. But you also get these polls for UCL Fantasy and FPL. So let's compare the stats of two of the forwards that you just saw there, Joao Pedro and Igor Thiago. The Brazilian, which one? The Brazilian from Brentford does lead with 17 goals and 1 assist, but Joao Pedro has some very balanced numbers with 8 assists and 10 goals. In terms of shot volume, Thiago does lead comfortably with 61 shots, 34 on target, and 58 inside the box. But Pedro has decent shot volume in general, but the shots on target is quite lacking at 19. The XG is solid for both, but Thiago is once again the victor with 14.56. The XA, though, I mean, that is a massive overperformance from Joao Pedro. 1.65 XA, and he's got 8 assists. And 17 big chances there, 4 big chances created, and 24 key passes. And Thiago does have the same number of big chances created, but fewer key passes, and significantly more big chances with 30, which is right up there amongst forwards. Only Erling Haaland really is comfortably ahead with 58 for this campaign. So I also showed you my best wildcard squad yesterday, and this is the exact same structure. 0.2 million in the bank. The expected points is 51.0. I've got Royce in goal, Dubravka as the backup, Gay, Van Dijk and Gabriel, Fernandes, Rogers, Semenyo and Rayan, Thiago, Joao Pedro and Haaland, with Konsa, Hill and Anderson on the bench. But I also discussed a sort of possible shift in structure, and that could require Joao Pedro downgraded to Kripke Jr. or Mane. Honestly, I think with both of them, I think Kripke is probably the better option long term, but he's also less nailed on at this moment in time. And then you could use those funds to do Semenyo to Palmer, but I wouldn't go for Kripke and Rayan simultaneously, and you would want a more consistent option to start week in, week out. So in this case, you could do something like this, and instead of Rayan, you could still go for Wilson. I think he's a good option regardless, but you might want to have even more money spent in the midfield. And with this structure, for example, by downgrading Joao Pedro, you could also start a back four from time to time. And this week, Konsa over Kripke is definitely viable. But with the captaincy from these players, I'd go for Palmer and probably Haaland as the vice. But the expected points is significantly lower at 46.1. And I think double Bournemouth attack is just not something I'd recommend really. But this is just one way of buying Cole Palmer in your FPL team by getting rid of Joao Pedro. I wouldn't recommend 2 or 3 Chelsea assets with their upcoming fixtures in mind, but if you have that, of course, keep it for the Burnley fixture and afterwards reassess when they face Arsenal and Aston Villa. With FPL Challenge, this is my current setup. So I've got Alisson in goal, and the only reason I've got him is because this week the challenge is called Old Foes, so double points are awarded for Nottingham Forest and Liverpool players. You can pick up to 3 players per club with an unlimited budget. Daniel Munoz is my only defender. I'm a bit unsure about this particular pick. Palmer's my captain with Salah, Joao Pedro and Erling Haaland. So I think the attack is quite stable, even the midfield to a certain extent, but my goalkeeper and defender could change in FPL Challenge, and I'll talk about that fairly soon. So these are my team selection graphics, which I'll show quite briefly because I delved into it in a lot of detail in yesterday's team selection podcast, but this is how I did for Double Gameweek 26. The less said about this, the better, because Sanchez blanked, so did Timber and Dallo. Gabriel got 7 points, and he was my captain. Fernandes blanked as well, which is quite rare for him. Morgan, Rogers and Enzo were quite disappointing, but Rice was the standout. And up front, only Erling Haaland produced the return. Mane and Thiago both blanked as well. The same goes for everyone on my bench. With prices, there were quite a few changes overnight. Erling Haaland now costs 14.8 million. Wilson went down as well to 5.9 million, and that's why my squad value has taken a slight hit. Klein to Munoz is on the cards. The same goes for Wilson to Antoine Semenyo and Thiago to Joao Pedro. But to be quite honest with you, and I made this quite clear in yesterday's video, I think Van Dijk would be a better defender to buy than Daniel Munoz, and that's why he is in the poll I put out on my channel earlier. So for Gameweek 27, my current team, by rolling, would be Sanchez, Dalot, Timber, Gabriel, Fernandes, Enzo, Wilson, Rice, Rodgers, Haaland, and Thiago, with Dubravka, Joachim Andersen, Mane, and Klein on my bench. If I were to make a move, I think Wilson to Semenyo looks very likely. If not, either Timber or Klein to Virgil van Dijk, and that would cause a change in my starting 11 there. But otherwise, I'm quite happy with this setup for now, but it's still not in a great position, I think, for the long run, with only one transfer at my disposal. So the expected points for Haaland has risen to 7.2 following the removal of the yellow flag, and he is the suggested captain by the algorithm. But yeah, I've currently gone for Haaland captain. So what you see here with Fernandes captain, Haaland vice, that has switched this morning. But the original plan was to captain Bruno Fernandes, which I might still end up doing, by the way. But at the moment, I am leaning towards Erling Haaland when it comes to the armband. So next up is going to be my scoreline predictions, which you haven't seen just yet. And feel free to provide your ones, especially after the deadline has passed. Aston Villa 2, Leeds 1, Brentford 1, Brighton 1, Chelsea 2, Burnley 0, West Ham 2, Bournemouth 2, Man City 3, Newcastle 1, Crystal Palace 1, Wolves 0, Nottingham Forest 1, Liverpool 1, Sunderland 1, Fulham 0, Tottenham Hotspur 0, Arsenal 2, and Everton 2, Manchester United 2. Those are my scoreline predictions, and it gives you some insight into which teams I think will keep a clean sheet, and also why I pick certain players in these dilemmas. So this week, Burnley is the highlighted team with their weakness in central areas, and Cole Palmer is my #1 recommendation for the captaincy, which you're going to see in just a couple of minutes' time. But before I do that, let's go into the clean sheet odds, where Chelsea are top with a 51% probability against Burnley at home. Palace, Arsenal, Aston Villa, Liverpool, and Manchester City complete the top 6, with Newcastle in last spot after their 6-1 win against Qarabag on Wednesday. So these are the top 10 captains now, and there are some interesting names on this list. 2 defenders as well, in Gabriel and Daniel Munoz in 10th and 8th respectively. Mohamed Salah is sandwiched between them, facing Nottingham Forest away, and that could easily be Ekitike or Florian Wirtz. Antoine Semenyo is 7th, with Mbumo just missing out on the top 5, which comprise of Rodgers, Bruno Fernandes, João Pedro, Erling Haaland, and Cole Palmer is #1. So let's now go to my FPL squad again, which is still not fully locked in yet. Good to see you. Morning, mate. Start Alderete or Richards. I've gone for a 1-0 win for both Sunderland and Crystal Palace, but I'd lean towards Alderete here. Mbumo and Timber out for Rodgers and O'Reilly. I wouldn't buy O'Reilly. I know he got a big return last week, but I think Gay is still the best Man City defender. And bear in mind, Arsenal, Man City, Crystal Palace and Wolves all blank in 31. I do like the Rodgers move, but you're also selling Mbumo. I'd probably recommend keeping what you have for now. Rice to Wirtz this week. Have one free transfer next week. I plan Chalobah to Van Dijk. I'd probably just roll. I think Rice could do really well over the next 4, to be fair. So if that could also cause you to take a hit next week to buy Van Dijk and Szoboszlai, I just wouldn't do it. Triple captain Man City player hoping in double Gameweek. Fair enough. I mean, I think that's a bit extra, what you just described there. 2 from Watkins, Rice, Dalot, Alderete. Have triple Arsenal and quad City. Okay, so 4 City players. With Foden, Haaland, Semenyo and Gay. 4 transfers in hand, 5 next week for the unravelling Arsenal and City for blank weeks ahead. Thank you. It's a well thought out strategy. In terms of 2 from Watkins, Rice, Dalot, Alderete, I would say Watkins and probably still Rice for me. Alderete isn't too far behind. I think Dalot is the worst option of the lot this week, but I'd still consider selling Watkins in the weeks to come, and Thiago would be a great replacement in the long run. Captain João Pedro Haaland, so yeah, that question was just addressed now in my recent graphic, right? The top 10 captains. Thank you, Keith. As he says, drop a like as well. So let's get this up to 100 plus. So yeah, it costs nothing and it goes a long way to supporting the channel. Dalot or Mukiele? Mukiele. Dalot or Hill? Close one. Probably Hill, considering his recent form. I'm chasing rapidly. Rayan, Thiago, Enzo start 1. Semenyo captain. Thiago, but he's not really a chasing sort of pick. He is quite template. Our team is identical besides Dallo, Mukiele. Yeah, that's very identical. Start Krupi or Anderson. Krupi Jr. I think Thiago's a decent shout for the captaincy and maybe deserves a mention in my top 10, and Brighton are in quite poor form at the moment. Morning, I have a dilemma. Can you help me start 2 and bench one of Dango, Krupi, Senesi? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did this already, mate, and I said to bench Senesi. Keep or sell Evanussen. I've got Haaland and Raul, would have 7.4 million. I'd sell Evanussen. But to be fair, I'd also sell Raul Jimenez, and I think Joao Pedro and Thiago would be great replacements for them. Rice or Dewsbury Hall? Rice. Welcome, Noor. 1 free transfer, 0.9 in the bank. Timber, Gabriel, Tarkowski, Anderson, Klein. Bruno, Enzo, Rogers, Rice, Dewsbury Hall, Haaland, Thiago, Mane. So you're thinking of, I'm guessing, Timber to Virgil or selling Tarkowski to make that happen. Yeah, that looks fine. I think buying Van Dijk makes sense. I think immediately what stood out was that you need defensive reinforcements, and ideally you'd also sell Klein. So yeah, buying Van Dijk for Timber and then upgrading Klein would be in your best interests. That could even be to Chris Richards or possibly Matty Cash. Who to captain? Well, yeah, you saw my captaincy list just now. So it's between Haaland, Bruno Fernandes. I think Haaland is the one, probably. Big up, Dylan. Hope you're well. Gordon captain came clutch. Yeah, same. I'm happy I did that because briefly I was entertaining Lookman and a few other assets on the Wednesday, but yeah, it was Anthony Gordon for me. Quite a template pick, but that's the thing about UCL Fantasy, right? If you nail on the captaincy on the Tuesday and you get 12 points from Garassi, you just think, oh, it's better to play it safe. I've had this before. A couple of years ago, I captained Immobile. He got like 9 points and I was happy with it. And then PSG had this game rescheduled, and then Neymar played on like a Thursday, something like that, and he got like 20 plus points. And people who got bad captaincy choices on the Tuesday and Wednesday ended up benefiting from that situation. So there is an element of luck in it as well, but that's also a part of the game with the micromanagement and being on top of things. Duarte says, if you want to gain points versus someone who has Palmer but not Joao Pedro, then it's better to captain Joao Pedro instead of Haaland because everyone has Haaland, and if Palmer blanks and Joao Pedro hauls, it's a huge differential move. Well, effective ownership is a big thing in FPL, probably much more so than UCL Fantasy and other games that I cover on this channel. But yeah, that can also make you sort of want your own assets that you have to actually blank. And from my perspective, it actually was better for me that Gabriel didn't do that well, despite the fact that I captained him, because so many triple captain Gabriel last week. What do you think of Thiago captain? Yeah, so just covered that. I've got 1 free transfer, Krupi to Thiago, or wait till next week. I'd probably do it now. Krupi's a good option against West Ham, but Thiago just offers that certainty for the long run. Gabriel, Timber, Hill, Chalobah, Munoz, Rice, Fernandes, Semenyo, Enzo, Wilson, Thiago, Haaland, Joao Pedro, bench 3. I would bench Hill, Timber, and probably Wilson. Start Mukiele or Timber. Start Mukiele. Is it mental to transfer Sarr out for Wolves for Palmer? Not really. The only thing is that Palmer faces Arsenal and Villa away back-to-back after Burnley at home. And Verts also other options, have free transfers. Yeah, and Mbumo is a good shout as well, Verts too, but yeah, I think Sarr to Palmer is worth it. Thank you, Keith. Thanks, mate, for the first sub. Who do you think is better out of Mane, Chow, or Van Heck? Tough one, but probably Van Heck. All terrible this week, I know, but who's the best of them in your opinion? Yeah, probably him. I mean, Mane isn't terrible, I guess, but I think he'll probably blank. After this game, should I do a -4 and Rice to Verts, Ender to Szoboszlai, and Chalobah to Virgil? I'm pretty sure I covered this earlier, Roses. I wouldn't sell Rice to Verts for a -4 hit. That was pretty much what I said. The others look fine. Yeah, Chalobah to Van Dijk makes sense in 28, not now. Enter to Szoboszlai as well. Yeah, that's decent, but I wouldn't take a -4 hit. Rice to Rogers or Semenyo next week. I like both of them. If it was this week, Rogers is my preference, but I think for 28, that could change a little bit. The thing is, I would only go to Semenyo if you're free hitting in 31. Because if you're in a situation with free Arsenal, you're then getting 2 or 3 City, you might have a Palace player, then you're kind of forcing yourself to take hits or use the free hit chip in blank Gameweek 31. But yeah, for Gameweek 28, I think Semenyo would be the preference. Welcome, Oogie Boogie. Always a pleasure. Start Senesi or Tarkowski? Probably Senesi. Very close though. I think both Everton and Bournemouth will concede. Indict Verts for a -4 or hold him until the Burnley game? Hold. Gabriel, Timber, O'Reilly, Munoz, Alderete, Wilson. Which two to bench? I would bench Wilson and O'Reilly. Start one of Maguire, Anderson or Alderete. I'd start Alderete. I have 2 free transfers. Tarkowski and Lacroix out for which two defenders? Yeah, Lacroix's the priority. He's most likely out for Gameweek 27. Well, apart from Gabriel, I'd say Van Dijk. I like Munoz this week, but not necessarily against Tottenham and Man United afterwards. There aren't many great defenders, to be fair. So it's probably going to be Gabriel, Van Dijk as the sort of standouts. Start 2, bench 2, Timber, Saliba, Richards, Wilson. I would start Richards and possibly Wilson here. But that's assuming you've got Gabriel already. I don't mind starting an Arsenal defender, but not 2 or 3 of them this week. Dallo or Mukiele? Mukiele. Yeah, easy. As covered before, 4 teams are blanking in 31. So the teams that doubled in 26 in Arsenal and Wolves will blank in 31. And the same goes for Man City and Crystal Palace. And their fixture will likely be rescheduled to Gameweek 36, but that hasn't been confirmed just yet. Welcome, Awali. Good to see you. Will Krupi Jr. play? I think he'll start. And you know what? I might as well show that because I've gone through so many different screens and answered dozens of questions at this point, but I haven't gone through the predicted lineup. So let's do that right now and start off with Arsenal. So I've got a few concerns about this lineup. I mean, I think one noticeable one would be Eze starting over Odegaard or possibly Madueke over Trossard, for example. And we could see Saka in this number 10 position and more of a 4-2-3-1. So that could allow both Trossard and Madueke to start on the wings. Saka just behind Victor Gyökeres. But in terms of the rest of the team, Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Hincapié, Zubimendi, Odegaard, and Declan Rice. So the numbers on the top right-hand corner of your screen are my correct scoreline predictions, and 297 was the maximum for Arsenal and Wolves. For everyone else, it's going to be 286. And for Aston Villa, Emi Martinez, Matty Cash, Konsa, Mings, Maatsen, Anana, Douglas Luiz, Sancho, Rodgers, Buendia, and Watkins is my predicted lineup for the Villains. Looking at the cherries now, Petrovic, Jimenez, Hill, Senesi, Truffert, Cook, Scott, Rayan, Krupi Jr., Adley, and Evanilson, who went down in price overnight. With Brentford, Kelleher, Coyote, Adja, Vandenberg, Henry, Yarmuluk, Janelt, Dango Ouattara, Jensen, Kevin Schade, who's back from suspension, and Igor Thiago. Moving on to Brighton, who are facing Brentford this week. Verbruggen, Vifa, who should return to the lineup fairly soon, Van Heck, Dunk, and Kadioglu. I've got a few concerns about the formation as well. Brighton could play a 4-3-3 and go for Gross, Belieber, and possibly Hinshelwood, but I've gone for Gomez on the right, Mitoma on the left, and Jorginho Rota just behind Danny Welbeck, who would lead the line. Burnley will likely go for this back three again with Dubravka, Laurent, Worrell, and Estev, Ogochukwu and Hannibal Miebri in the midfield, Walker and possibly Humphreys at left wing back, as we saw last week, Edwards and Anthony on the wings, and Fleming up front. Chelsea, who are facing the Clarets this week, will likely go for Sanchez, James, Fofana, Chalobah and Hato, Andre Santos and Caicedo, Neto, Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, and Joao Pedro, who is in incredible form right now. Crystal Palace have a major concern at the back in Lacroix, and I think Canvo and Chadi Riyad will start alongside Richards, with Henderson in goal, Wharton and Kamada in central midfield, Munoz and Mitchell as the wing-backs, Sarr, Yeremy Pino, and Strand Larsen facing his former club. Everton could go for Pickford, and O'Brien is suspended, so Patterson is the likely replacement for him at that right-back spot, with Tarkowski, Branthwaite, Mikalenko, Idrissa Gana Gueye and Ghana, Armstrong, Dewsbury Hall, Indai, and Tierno Barry. There is a chance that Tariq George starts once again, but I've gone for Armstrong instead. With Fulham, Leno, Tete, Anderson, Bassi, and Robinson, there is a chance that Sessegnon starts instead, but I'm going for the American at left back, Iwobi and Sandenberg in central midfield, Wilson, Smith Rowe, Kevin, and Raul Jimenez up front. Leeds United will likely go for Darlow, Bogle, Rodon, Bjol, Strauch and Goodmanson, Gruev, Ampadu and Stack. Nemechan Aronson is in my predicted lineup and no Calvert-Lewin, but that might not be completely accurate. The Premier League champions Liverpool will likely go for Alisson, Szoboszlai, who's back from suspension, Kanate, Van Dijk and Kirkes, Gravenberch and McAllister, Salah, Wirtz, Gakpo and Ekitike. Manchester City have a few concerns here. Is it going to be O'Reilly at left back, or will it be both Aït-Nouri and O'Reilly starting simultaneously? That's what I've gone for, with Donnarumma, Matheus Nunes, Ruben Dias and Gay, Rodri, Foden, Bernardo Silva, Antoine Semenyo and Erling Haaland, who went down in price overnight. Manchester United have one possible key change here, with Cunha making way for Benjamin Sesko and Mbeumo on the left. I mean, this is not set in stone, and maybe I am overestimating this, but Sesko has made an impact in recent matches against Fulham and West Ham, scoring late goals to give Man United some crucial points. Lamens, Dalot, Maguire, Lisandro Martinez and Shaw, Casemiro, Mainu, Fernandes, Ahmad and Mbeumo should all start. The main concern really is if it's going to be Sesko leading the line or Mbeumo, and does that mean Cunha drops to the bench? Let me know your thoughts in the live chat. With Newcastle, Pope, Trippier, Chow, Burn and Hall, Tonali and possibly Joelinton, who returns from injury, Jacob Murphy, Voltemada as the 10, Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon up front after scoring 4 goals in the Champions League. And Nottingham Forest got a big win in the Europa League with Ortega Moreno, Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo, Williams, Sangare, Elliot Anderson, Hutchinson, Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi and Luca, who is the biggest doubt I think in the lineup. So with Sunderland, Renildo Mandava is out, so I think him will play at left back with Rose in goal, Mukiele, Ballard and Alderete. Xhaka could return to the starting 11 with Siddiqui, Talbi, Diarra, Lefay and Brobby up front. We're now approaching the last couple of teams with Tottenham Hotspur, who could play a back three with their new manager Igor Tudor, in the North London derby. Vicario, João Paulinho, Dragusin, Van der Ven, Gray and Spence as the wing-backs, Gallagher and Pape Sarr in central midfield, and then Colomwani, Xavi Simons and Solanke in the forward line. West Ham could go for Hermansen, Wan-Bissaka, Mavropanos, Disasi and Diouf, but Todibo is now available. Fernandes and Magassa in central midfield, Bowen, Soucek, Somerville and Dati Castellanos. The last team is Wolves with Jose Sarr, Mosquera, Santiago Bueno, Crechi, Rodrigo Gomez and Hugo Bueno as the wing-backs. And I think the main concern would be in the midfield. Will Angel Gomez start again, or will Andre, Joao Gomez and Mane take his place? And that's what I've gone for at the moment, with Tolu and Armstrong up front. So that's very extensive, of course, covering all the injuries, suspensions, price changes and stuff like that. So drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'm going to get back to your questions here. But yeah, thank you to those that have supported the channel. Captain Palmer or Haaland, you saw that earlier. Palmer is my answer. Defenders man mark Palmer more now after his first year. He's trying to find his way out of that. Of course, you have to adapt when a player breaks through to that sort of level. You can't just let him get as much space as he wants. But as I mentioned before, even in that debut season, he scored 10 penalties, which massively inflated the numbers. That's not taking away what he did, because it was a brilliant season. But there was always that degree of sort of unsustainability, if you will, in terms of him scoring 20 plus goals every single season. Could he do it again? Absolutely, but it's not something you can count on every single year. I've been around 400 to 700k for the past 12-15 game weeks, always rolling, thinking, let's see how this player does this week, then the player hauls, so I'll be going early on players for the rest of the season. I get that frustration. I've also been kind of stuck. I made so much progress until December, and then I've just hit a wall and not been able to crack into the top 100k yet, but yeah, I'm not going to sit here and discourage you, because you want to find your own formula and way of making those rank rises and getting the green arrows. But there is a possibility that once you do this, it backfires and then you're like, oh, so it's like, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. But you just got to keep pushing and making the best decision possible and do what you think is going to bring you the most points. So I think it's definitely logical for you to change your approach a little bit, but you don't want to change everything completely. So we do have a super chat in the building. Thank you very much to Jazz9117. Free transfers, no wildcard. Raya, Dubravka, Gabriel, Timber, Munoz, Maguire, Alderete, Enzo, Palmer, Bruno, Mbeumo, Rogers, Thiago, Joao Pedro, Vanason. Yeah, with free transfers, you've got flexibility. What I would probably suggest in your case is Timber to Van Dijk. I like that move quite a lot, and it helps you set up for blank Gameweek 31 as well. You don't need to use all of these transfers, but something else you might want to consider is selling Ivanosen, but you don't have Erling Haaland, of course, but to buy him in, you'd have to restructure your squad, and I do like your midfield. What I would say, though, is after Gameweek 27, I would sell Enzo Fernandez, and that's where Declan Rice or Antoine Semenyo could come into play, but yeah, I'm quite happy with your team. If I had to suggest one move this week, it's probably going to be Timber to Virgil van Dijk. You've also got Ryan Gabriel, so even more reason to make that sort of switch. Let me know your thoughts in the live chat, and thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you as well to Jignesh. Very, very kind of you. Start Timber or O'Reilly? Timber for me. Would you play Rice or Krupi Jr.? It's very close. I would maybe lean towards Krupi. Some FPL creators saying that triple captain chip is wasteful and the weakest chip of all. Well, I mentioned this earlier. It is an overrated chip, and if you get 15 plus points, you'd be quite happy with that in terms of your player scoring that as his baseline score. So, yeah, out of all the chips, it's probably the weakest. Even the bench boost to a certain extent, and that's a lottery. You just never know what you're going to get from the bench boost especially. But, yeah, the most powerful chip is the wildcard by far. The free hit would be second, and those are the most important ones. But you obviously want to nail on all of them because that gives you a great chance of success in Fantasy Premier League. Thank you, Keith. As he says, hit the like button and all that good stuff. 100 ton, great name, says Gabriel, Timber, O'Reilly, Munoz, Alderete, Wilson, which to the bench. I'm pretty sure I covered this, but yeah, Timber and O'Reilly would be the ones to bench in my opinion. I mean, if you want to prevent this sort of clash between Alderete and Wilson, then I'd lean towards benching Wilson, but I still think Wilson's ceiling is higher than both O'Reilly and Timber this week. How many teams will blank in 31? Yeah, I cover that easy, not going to lie to you. Start one of Maguire, Anderson, or Alderete. I would start Alderete. I have 2 free transfers, Tarkowski and Lacroix out for which 2 defenders. I'm not sure if my chat is bugged out and is saying that I haven't covered these questions before, but yeah. Virgil van Dijk would be one of the top ones for me. Start 2, bench 2. Also covered, so yeah, Timber would be on the bench. Definitely Saliba, sorry, and one of Timber or Wilson. So that was also covered earlier. Let's go for the new ones. Let's see. So you can see my current captain at the moment, probably Haaland. A Man City differential. It's probably either Cherky or you're looking at a defender like Ruben Dias / Matheus Nunes. I still think the best 3 are the template picks, Haaland, Semenyo and Gay. Hi Dylan, Thiago, Wilson. Thiago. Charles, Zubimendi, Wilson to Hill, Szoboszlai and Sarr. Looks decent. I think Hill isn't guaranteed a clean sheet this week. In fact, I think Bournemouth will concede, but for his price, you're not really going to better that at 4 million. Between Szoboszlai and Sarr, it's a close one. I think Sarr will score more goals, but Szoboszlai is more likely to get DEFCON, bonus points, and maybe assists as well. I lean towards Szoboszlai with Liverpool's fixtures. Pick a captain you're chasing. Rodgers, Bruno Fernandes, Haaland, Ekitike. Well, if you're chasing, it's probably going to be Bruno Fernandes, I guess. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how people are approaching it this week and what the template move is. Maybe it's Haaland or a Chelsea player. But yeah, if you want to go differential and chase, it's going to be Rodgers from those 3. Or from all those options. But yeah, interesting question. By the way, someone in the live chat earlier did say about Semenyo being benched, and I haven't seen anything about it, and I haven't heard any news about that. So just let me know. If you have a link to it, it'd be greatly appreciated. And keep on dropping a like on this stream. The plan is to get to over 100 likes, and then to get to 200 plus if possible. But 150 is the goal. So let's keep on racking up those likes, subscriptions, and keep on growing because 39,000 subscribers is on the horizon. Good to see you, Claudette. It's been a while. Morning, Semenyo, Mbeumo, Fernandes, Enzo, Rice. Who to bench, Dylan? I think from those players, very interesting. Fernandes would definitely not be benched for me. It's probably Rice, who did well against Tottenham in the reverse fixture. And in fact, for his next 4 opponents, he did very well when he last played them. And that includes 11 points against Everton. But Yeah, I think Rice would be on the bench here. Harrison James is planning to roll. I can see why. It makes sense. I still think O'Reilly is sellable, for example. Even Ekitike isn't particularly nailed on, and you could sell him to Thiago fairly soon, but I think for this week it makes sense to keep things as they are and have more free transfers next week because I think flexibility is so important in FPL. I wouldn't sell Rice to Szoboszlai personally. Dylan, is it a good idea to wildcard in Gameweek 28 to set up for a bench boost? For a blank Gameweek 31 and save transfers from Gameweek 32 onwards? It's an alternative strategy. It makes sense. And I talked about wildcarding possibly in 30 or 32. So if I wildcarded in 32, what I'd probably end up doing is basically dead-ending my team into blank Gameweek 31 and then wildcarding out of it to then set up the bench boost in 33. That's my preferred strategy at the moment, but I am open-minded, and what you suggest is definitely an alternative and reasonable pathway. Bench Enzo or Senesi? I'd bench Senesi. Is Joao Pedro a captaincy option? Yes. Bench Gravenberch or Mukiele? I'd bench Gravenberch. Triple captain Man City playing a double? Yeah, I covered this question before, and like I said, that thing is a bit weird. I mean, people call Man City sharks. You're saying tigers. Fair enough. I think Arsenal are just fumbling it, really. City aren't that great this season, but they could still win the league because of Arsenal's dumbness. Would you play Rice or Krupi Jr.? Yeah, as covered before, very close, but probably Krupi Jr. Also, thoughts on Saliba to Virgil? I would do it. That's pretty much all I'd say about that. Yeah, I don't really blame you, Cheese Fungi, and I've experienced that before in UCL Fantasy. We all have those moments, but yeah, this time the Mbappe 5-pointer was a blessing in disguise, really. Is it worth it if I go for Timber to Mark Gay? Still have Gabriel? Yeah, it's worth it. Just bear in mind they both blank in 31, and you'd probably free hit in that particular blank game week, or have to make transfers / take hits to navigate that game week in a good way. Hi Dylan, hope you're well. Who to bench, Mukiele or Van den Berg? I would bench Van den Berg, and I hope you're doing well too. Pick a captain you're chasing. Rodgers would be the one if you're chasing. Start Wilson or Timber. Close one. I think probably Wilson if you've got Gabriel in your team. Do I play Gay, Mukiele or Senesi? I'd play Mukiele personally. Gay is a close second though. Hello Dylan, should I take a -4 hit for Timber to Hill and Gu to Thiago? Yes, I would do that. So yeah, that's a good set of moves there. I'm thinking Gyökeres and Cherki to Ekitike and Rayan, or Gyökeres, Rice and Cherki to Rayan, Ekitike, Semenyo, one for a -4, other for a -8. Okay, so good moves in general. I'll be honest, I'd probably stick with the -4. I still like Declan Rice. As much as I like Semenyo, I don't think it's worth taking an extra hit to sell the Arsenal midfielder, but instead of Ekitike, I prefer Thiago, if I'm being honest. Charles of Mendy Wilson to Hill, Szoboszlai Sarr. That was covered earlier. My answer was yes, and probably Szoboszlai over Sarr long term. Tumi Sang says, hi Dylan, I have Raya, Gabriel, Hill, Mukiele, Dango, Bruno Fernandes, Rodgers, Enzo, Rice, Haaland, Joao Pedro, bench, Krupi, Keane, Chalobah. Who to start and bench? I'd start Chalobah over Hill. I definitely wouldn't have Chalobah last on the bench there. I think the rest is fine. I agree with the order. You could probably put Hill second on the bench, Keane third, start Chalobah, and you don't need to make a transfer this week, in my opinion. But that's just the way I see it. It's possible, but probably unlikely, to be fair. I think with Joao Pedro, if I could do Mane to Joao Pedro, I would 100% do it. And the only way I can make that happen is if I take a -4 hit this week. Let's actually play around with this. So if I could do Mane to Joao Pedro, yeah, nah. This is what I'd probably consider, right? If I had enough money. Timber to Van Dijk. Wait, actually, I do have enough money. Oh, hold up. Let me cook. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I can't lie. Don't go anywhere. There could be a late change. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, it is a -4 hit, which isn't great, but not bad. Not bad. It is triple Chelsea, but I think Enzo would make way in the future. The only problem with this, though, is it has obviously probably weakened my ability to get Semenyo and to make an upgrade in the midfield. But it is very strong. Now, that would be a big benching headache every week, right? But I think this week Wilson would be the one to leave out. That could become a problem in the future. But yeah, I do like the look of this. I'm not going to lie to you. Timber to Virgil van Dijk and then buying Joao Pedro. I might end up doing this, I'm not going to lie to you. So, yeah, we have a potential eureka moment here. So, yeah, thank you to Awali for, I guess, evoking that. Hey, Dylan, start Senesi or Wilson. I'd start Wilson. Good to see you as well, by the way, that air. Cheers as always, Dylan. Best of luck. Likewise, Harrison James, and thank you to everyone who is tuning in, and especially to the members, patrons, subscribers. You're all massively appreciated. No team news necessarily, sorry. Yeah, that Semenyo benching rumor that I heard earlier, I just don't really see where that's coming from. So in terms of leaks and stuff, nothing that I've seen, but I'll keep an eye out for that. Kelleher or Rofs long-term? Rofs. Bench 2 out of Timber, Cash, DC on Krupi. I would bench Calvert-Lewin and probably Cash. I think Leeds could score. Start 3 of Gabriel, Timber, Hill, Mukiele, Munoz. One sec. Just in case, I'm going to get my dice and also coin, just in case I need to flip and become Two-Face. So for Mustafa's question, I'm going to say bench 2 players of these. I would bench Timber and Hill. So start Gabriel, Mukiele, and Munoz. Petrovic or Verbruggen. Better fixture for Petrovic, but I've gone for 2-2 in the West Ham Bournemouth game and 1-1 between Brentford and Brighton. I'd say start Petrovic just because of the fixture, but based on my scoreline predictions, you're relying on save points from Petrovic to kind of match the other score. But either way, we're looking at, what, 1 to 3 points maybe, based on my predictions? Yeah, it's not really much in it. Probably Petrovic. Captain Semenyo or Thiago? Semenyo, but Thiago should be in the top 10, to be fair. I probably should have put him in that list. Bowen to Thiago or hold? I'd do it. Buy Thiago. Start Alderete or Timber? If you've got Gabriel in your lineup already, I'd start Alderete and hedge your bets a little bit. Start Wirtz or Mbumo, Martinez or Kelleher? I would start Mbumo and Martinez, but I think Wirtz is decent, to be fair. No worries there. Look, sometimes I'll get things wrong and people call me out for it. It is what it is, right? But yeah, just with Gabriel, I thought he'd do better than 7 points, by the way. I thought he'd get like between 8 to 12 points. I captained him, by the way. It's not like I completely avoided him, but I just didn't have enough confidence to triple captain him, which I think is a bit of a difference there. And also looking at Man City's potential double, which will likely be in 36, I just like the look of Palace and Brentford at home for Erling Haaland, and that is my current plan. But maybe they'll end up doubling elsewhere, and that can change the complexion of the double, and it doesn't end up being that great anyway. Anish says, hey Dylan, Kelleher, Chalobah, Munoz, Gabriel, Timber, Enzo, Rogers captain, nice. Wirtz, Bruno Fernandes, Sarr, Thiago, bench, Rofs, Haaland, Krupi, and Mukiele. I would consider starting Mukiele over Timber, to be fair. And you're starting 4 defenders this week, which is interesting. You've got Haaland on your bench. Yeah, I just can't really bring myself to recommend that. I'd also start Rofs over Kelleher. I think what I do in your team, by the way, so let's get this sorted. I'd start Rofs over Kelleher. I'd keep your defensive line as is, but nah, I'd start Haaland over Timber. Yeah, start Haaland over Timber. I would have Krupi possibly first on your bench, Timber second, Mukiele third. Yeah. I have no problems with your Rogers captaincy, by the way. He got 15 points against them last time out. I hope he can do something similar. But yeah, I disagree with the bench order, and I would change things a little bit. Thank you, Awale. As he says, subscribe to the channel, like the stream. Start Wirtz or Mbumo? Yeah, that was been covered. The last question, though, Hill or Mukiele? I'd start Mukiele. Verbruggen or Pickford? It's a close one this week, but probably Verbruggen. Bench Mukiele or Timber? If you got Gabriel already, I'd start Mukiele. If it's just one versus the other, it is quite close. I mean, I'd personally say Sunderland are slightly more likely to keep a clean sheet than Arsenal. Start Raul or Dallo? Raul Jimenez. Yeah, probably. I think both of them will blank, though. I would sell Donnarumma if possible. Semenyo doesn't even play in Europe and not eligible for the Carabao Cup final. See no reason why he'd be benched at all. I agree. I don't think there's any weight to it, personally. Sell Krupi to Thiago or do it next week? I'd do it now. Random, is Salah historically good during Ramadan? Not really, actually. I think his performances typically dip, and the performances haven't been great to begin with this season. But yeah, I've been asked this question not many times, but over the last couple of years, I've probably been asked it maybe once a year on average, and it's an interesting one. But I think, yeah, there is a bit of a correlation there. And also, just from January onwards, I think he starts seasons very well, and then he has a bit of a dip post-Christmas after he shares the Christmas tree and all that. It's only 50% done, but I think you were the only creator not to triple captain Gabriel. Oh, okay, I'm surprised by that. If I'm the only one, surely there's another creator out there, someone who makes videos. There must be, surely. But yeah, look, he got 7 points. Maybe Haaland ends up getting 1 or 2 when I triple captain him. You just never know. So it could be a blessing in disguise, or it could be a curse. Hi, Dylan, should I do Rice to Verts? I would keep Rice personally, but I understand the appeal of Florian Wirtz. I talked about him quite a lot in my recent wildcard videos. Play Krupi or Wilson. I'd play Krupi. Start Hill, Mbuma or Timber. Definitely Mbuma. Is Arteta... Should we give Arteta, or is it... Should Arteta be given 1 more year if he fails to win again this season? I think context is very important. I've been asked this question so many times by my friends, and when I give the sort of diplomatic answer, they're like, oh no, don't sit on the fence or whatever, but it's my genuine opinion. So I think with Arsenal, the style of football over the past year hasn't been great. There's no denying that. But if it brings results, and at the moment Arsenal are competing on all fronts, then you can sort of bear with it and understand. I think Arteta has done a good job, but the last step is to get over the line, win trophies. He's only won an FA Cup and 2 Shields. That's not enough. I think with the team Arsenal have built over the past 3 years now, even 4 to a certain extent, they should have won more. They should have won something. A Premier League. The Champions League, I understand, it's good progress there, and they were incredible in the league phase this season, but it's now about stepping up on the big occasion in the knockout phase playoffs. So if Arsenal don't win anything and they play bad football, that's just, it doesn't bode well, right? And ultimately, the key players as well could end up leaving. I know Saka signed a 5-year contract extension recently, but what about Declan Rice, Saliba? I know these top players, even Gabriel. I know he signed a contract fairly recently too, but yeah, I think with Arsenal, they have a good squad, one of the best in Europe, and they should be winning things. And I also think that Arteta sometimes is too pragmatic, and we've seen that over the past year in particular. So with Arteta, if he wins nothing this season and the football doesn't improve, then I think serious questions need to be asked at least. But I recognise the good job he has done. I'm not going to flip and react and say he's a terrible manager, because he isn't. He's a top quality manager. His tactics are one of the best in Europe, and I think he's done a lot of good at Arsenal, but it's about getting over the line. It's a mentality issue, and I think once Arsenal break that hurdle, I think then the pressure sort of eases and they relax a little bit more, and they can start playing some more expansive football potentially and winning more trophies. But yeah, Arsenal need to win trophies for sure, and not just the Carabao Cup, by the way. And I'm not saying they should throw that away, because that's still important. And yeah, it's about Arsenal just winning as much as possible. I think this year, in every single competition, Arsenal have a genuine chance of winning it. A quadruple is unlikely for any team, especially with Arsenal's history as well in the Carabao and the Champions League, but it's possible to win 2 or 3 trophies this year, and it would be a huge chance missed, in my opinion, if they don't get some silverware this season. Thank you, Anish. All recommended changes made. Cheers, Dylan. Yeah, hopefully that helps you out, Anish. We can go back to this and see if I ended up costing you points or helping you gain a few, but yeah, just benching Haaland for Timber, I just can't really agree with that personally. Keller versus Rofes is interesting, and maybe you went for the right choice originally, but I just have more confidence in Sunderland keeping a clean sheet. I sold Haaland and Enzo for Thiago and Palmer. I like the players you're bringing in, but both Haaland and Enzo are quality assets this week especially. But yeah, Haaland blanks in 31. You can always bring him back after that blank game week in particular. And I think with Enzo, the best time to sell him in isolation or on paper would be in game week 28. If Arteta misses the Prem but wins UCL, easy keep in my opinion. Yeah, but that's a big if, right? And Arsenal never won the Champions League, right? And they've had many great nights in Europe, but they've never been able to go all the way. And they've only reached 1 final, which is not good enough for a club of Arsenal's size. But yeah, I think Arsenal can win either trophy. Winning both is very difficult, to be honest, but they have to win one of those. I think the Premier League or the Champions League. And after that, I think Arteta and the whole perception around them changes from rival fans to Arsenal supporters as well. because he has done a lot of good work at Arsenal. I think even his biggest critics can, maybe to a certain extent, at least admit that. But yeah, I think that Wolves game, at least online, caused a lot of like a switch against him because the football was so pragmatic. Why are you defending like that after being 2-0 up and being in cruise control and letting it slip the way you did against one of the worst teams in Premier League history? It's just not good enough. Sanchez or Rofs? This week it would be Sanchez, but it's quite close actually. Buy in Thiago or João Pedro? Long term it'd be Thiago. For Ivanoson or Raul Jimenez? Well, ideally I'd say buy both of them and sell Ivanoson and Raul Jimenez, but if I had to pick one, it's probably going to be Ivanoson to Thiago, and in the future you can always offload Raul Jimenez as well. Only have one free transfer, also have triple Arsenal defence and Sahu or blank soon. Well, that's where the free hit could come into play for you in blank Gameweek 31. Otherwise, you trim down your Arsenal assets and potentially make, well, if you don't take free transfers, you can just take the odd hit or the, can't even speak English. Yeah, you can either make transfers or take the odd hit. Hey Dylan, Guy to Thiago, plus Enzo to Ray and Dewsbury Hall as my 8th attacker. I like the look of that. I'd lean towards Ray over Dewsbury Hall right now, but they're both solid. Hi Dylan, keeping Anderson Nottingham Forest, minimum 4-5 points every week. Understandable. He featured in my best wildcard squad for a reason. With a 3-5-2, Rodgers plus Mbumo plus Enzo, Rice, Anderson, Hal and Thiago, or 3-4-3 with Anderson to Gyökeres. Stick with a 3-5-2 to be fair. I was quite bullish on Gyökeres last week, but he didn't do too well. Yeah, I think Arsenal have been a bit stale recently, and there have been concerns even in January. Those 3 matches against Man United, Forest and Liverpool. I mean, how are you not scoring a single goal against Liverpool this season? I mean, it's unbelievable. And then you look at back-to-back goalless draws, 2 points from 9 in that spell, 10 out of the last 21 available. Arsenal just... I'm not asking for like perfection, even though I am a bit of a perfectionist. I want to win every single game, but yeah, at least get 15 to 18 points from those 21 available. And then if you drop points against Wolves even, you can sort of accept it or forgive it a little bit. But yeah, Arsenal have been very inconsistent in the Prem in 2026. Bowen to Thiago, yes. Hello mate, good to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Thank you Alex, and hopefully you're doing well too. Let me know how you're going, both in FPL and overall, mate. I'm worried about Semenyo. Have a midfield of Sarr, Rodgers, Bruno, Enzo, and Wilson. Do you think it's okay to hold? It's a good midfield, but if you could buy Semenyo, I would recommend selling Wilson to make that possible. Yeah, the thing is, realistically, I think Arsenal... Well, I think Arsenal will win a trophy this season, but I want it... If I had to pick, it's going to be the Champions League, and yeah, the Premier League, of course, I'd love it. I want both of them. I want all of it, but yeah, the Champions League is what Arsenal need more than most, and then it's the Prem. And I love the FA Cup. That's like a cherry on top, an added bonus, but yeah, Arsenal really need the Champions League, that's for sure. Start Mukiele or Hill? Mukiele. Hi Dylan, I've got Watkins and Rodgers in my team. Since Tammy has arrived, I'm not sure about Watkins' minutes going forward. What do you think? Watkins is still first choice, but Tammy will get the odd start from him, and Watkins has had a few injury problems in recent weeks, which hasn't helped. I would swap him to Thiago though. If not this week, you can always do it in 28, but that is the right move. It's just a question of timing. I need a good week, been very unlucky the past few game weeks. Good luck, Ahmad. Hopefully you can get that green arrow, and it can be frustrating when you seem to stagnate or lack that progression with the green arrows, so hopefully you can get that this time round. Buy Mbumo or Wirtz? Probably Wirtz if I had to buy one. Hi Dylan, I've got a huge benching headache. Mukiele over Ekitike. I'd start Ekitike still because his ceiling is higher, but yeah, in so many of these scenarios, mainly Mukiele against other defenders, I've picked the Sunderland option in Mukiele. I also have Senesi and Lefebvre on my bench. My team value is 107.1. That's kind of crazy. I mean, mine's quite poor in comparison. Yeah, I think that's fine. I'd start Ekitike. Probably have Mukiele first on the bench, Lefebvre second, and Senesi third. I think West Ham will score against Bournemouth. Yeah, I got over 110 points. I think 119 in the end. And Gordon captain obviously was the standout. Start one, Krupi, Anderson, O'Reilly. I would start Krupi Jr. Sell Ahmad for Dango. Looks good. But you know my Bought some feelings on midfielders. I do prefer Rodgers, Rice, Semenyo. Enzo for this week, but long-term, maybe he's not a purchase. Also, Rayan, Elliot Anderson, even Wilson. I think they're all better options than Dango, but he has shown decent form recently. All good here, mate. Glad it's finally the weekend. Got a little bit of sun here in Liverpool. Finally too, so happy days. Yeah, there's no sun here, as far as I'm aware, but maybe there is. I mean, I got the blinds there, so it's hard for me to tell. Yeah. A bit of sunshine wouldn't hurt, right? But it's the UK. We're kind of used to it by now. But enjoy it. And yeah, have a great weekend, a restful one, and we'll speak very soon. Made up a huge amount of rank with Palmer since Gameweek 22. Nice one. I actually recommended him quite early as a purchase in my Transstits videos. If you go back to that sort of time frame, Gameweek 21, 22. And yeah, he's been explosive. We all know the capability of the player, and the penalties have certainly helped. Thank you as well, Ajna. Very kind of you. And Ignacio as well. Palmer or Haaland for captain? It would be Palmer for me. Haaland is second, and it's quite close between those two, Fernandes and Joao Pedro, but Palmer is number one. As for Dango versus Thiago, Thiago is still the best Brentford asset by some distance. Which one is better, Verbruggen or Pickford? Well, the better asset? Am I Sean Connery? The best asset overall is Pickford, but for this week it's quite close. I'd probably say Verbruggen. Yeah, I think so. I've gone for 2-2 Everton, Manchester United, and 1-1 between Brentford, Brighton. Then it's about saves, but yeah, probably Verbruggen. No worries, Zico. Itumlad says, Araya, Dubravka, Timber, Gabriel, Anderson, Michele, Richards, Mbumo, Bruno, Wilson, Tavernier, Garner, Haaland, Joao Pedro, Thiago, 2 free transfers and 0 in the bank. Thoughts? Me gusta. Yeah, looks good. Good squad. In terms of players to possibly sell over the coming weeks, I think Timber, Anderson, Wilson, Tavernier, who is back by now, right? Or he will be back soon, but yeah, I'd sell Tavernier still. Nothing in the bank is interesting, but I think what you could consider here is Timber to Hill, and then using those funds to upgrade Tavernier. That would be my recommendation. Starting Dallo or Hill, I'd go for Hill, and Enzo. Richards or Mukiele, bench one. Very close, but I'd probably bench Richards. Start Krupi or Rice, another close one, and as mentioned earlier, it'd be Krupi. Wilson or Anderson form, Nottingham Forest. From Nottingham Forest. Yeah, I would say Wilson has the high ceiling, but Anderson offers that sort of stability and consistency at 4 to 5 points. Based on my predictions this week, I would say start Elliot Anderson. So Ahmad for Dango. Yes, but I mentioned other midfielders to buy instead of Dango. Just my personal opinion on that. But what I want to do is put a poll out on this channel. In the live chat, in fact. So these are my updated transfer plans. Okay, so oh, you're a big Sean Connery fan. I actually don't know why. It's just sometimes I say something in a Sean Connery sort of way. Probably not. It's just it reminds me of him. I'm not a massive Sean Connery fan in general, to be honest. Good actor, but it's not my favorite or anything. No offense to him. Just saying. So these are my updated transfer plans. Yeah, so -4 hit. Let's put that at the top. Oi, oi. Timber and Mane, who I just bought in, by the way, last week. And I bought Timber last week as well. And I'm getting rid of them already. Great planning, Dylan. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, right arrow emoji. Yash. All right, let's get this up. So that would, not Timber, Timber. All right, so Virgil and Joao Pedro. But not enough characters. Let's put VVD then. So -4. Are you... how can I make this... I've got to put like abbreviations and stuff. Let's just put J Pedro. Stupid character limit. Okay. The other one would be... Let's just do individual transfers. So let's do Klein to Virgil. Yeah, Klein to Virgil. I think I can afford that, right? Let's just go back a little bit. Restore these two players and then put Klein. Yeah, I can afford that. Klein to Virgil van Dijk. Okay. Van Dijk. And then we're going to go for Thiago to João Pedro. Not really feeling that one, to be honest. And the last one is going to be Wilson to Semenyo, which I do like, by the way. But let's do that. So these are my updated transfer plans. Timber and Mane to Van Dijk and João Pedro for a -4. Klein to Van Dijk, Wilson to Semenyo, and Thiago to João Pedro. So there you go. So let's go back in time. If you haven't already, drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We are close to 100, so let's be sure to reach that fairly soon, and possibly 150 by the end of the deadline stream. We still have just under an hour before we reach that, and if we do hit our super chat goal, this stream will keep on going, much to the anguish of the haters and the doubters. If you had Palmer in your squad, would you sell Enzo? Yes, but probably after Gameweek 27. Against Burnley at home, I think it's worth keeping him. For sure. I think you are. You mention him loads. Maybe have a watch a Highlander tonight. Like Arteta, don't lose your head. Fair enough. Yeah, I haven't seen that many films of Sean Connery, actually. But yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why it's so random. It's maybe one of my ticks, I guess. Hi, thoughts on Krupa to Thiago and Nunes to Hill. This means I either have to bench Hill, Mukiele, or Timber. Interesting. Yeah, I like both of those moves. In terms of benching one of those players, it's going to be Hill, but I like him as an FPL asset. Triple Villa against Leeds, Martinez, Cash, Rogers, or Cash to Mukiele. I'd probably go from Cash to Mukiele, and in fact, I think Sunderland have a better chance of a clean sheet this week. Gyökeres and Cherki to Rain and Ekitike for a -4, or the same thing and Rice to Semenyo for a -8. I'm 7 million. I thought you said 4 million earlier. How did you go down by 3 million in just a few messages? But I'm going to say stick with the -4. I still like Rice. I don't think it's worth selling him. Put JP, not João Pedro. Yeah. I was thinking that for the live chat. I just put J Pedro, just in case, to make it even easier. I'm actually surprised by this, though. I mean, I get it. Klein to Van Dijk is a massive upgrade, but I do like Timber and Mane to Van Dijk and João Pedro. I think that looks really good. I'm going to play around with it a little bit in FPL.team and talk about the repercussions for Gameweek 28 and beyond, because I think that also helps when finalizing those moves. Who to start between Timber, Gabriel, Vandenberg, Anderson, and Chalobah? Already have Raya. Ideally want to start free. Yeah, I would start Gabriel, Chalobah, and then it's close, but probably in this case, Anderson. Raya or Martinez? Raya. Rice up for Semenyo this week, only for free. I don't think it's worth selling Rice for a hit. I like him for the next 4. Hey Dylan, would you play Richards or Timber? It's close, but I prefer Timber in isolation. And would you play Krupi or Harry Wilson? Probably Krupi Jr. Hey Dylan, who would you start out of Bowen and Krupi? That's a close one. Bowen has been a bit underwhelming recently, but probably Bowen. Have you seen Highlander? Has a Queen soundtrack. I don't think I've seen Highlander, to be fair. I like Queen, but they're not my favourite, to be honest. But I do love music from the 70s and 80s, so can't get enough of it, to be fair. Start Anderson and Wilson or Richards and Vandenberg? I would start... Richards and Vandenberg, I think. Hi Dylan, which route would you take, Wirtz and Hill or Szoboszlai and Thiago? I've got 4 transfers and I'm trying to figure out the best way to use them. Appreciate it. Probably Thiago and Szoboszlai. And I do like the Hill move and Wirtz is solid, but I think Thiago Szoboszlai looks even better. Fair enough, Captain Calfridge. Hopefully you can rise up the rankings and yeah, I think what we discussed will help you for sure. Isn't it a bit late to go for João Pedro? Oh yeah, no. Just to make it clear, by the way, for the for the first -4 hit that I talk about and what I'm kind of leaning towards, yeah, it would be Mane to Joao Pedro. I don't want to sell Thiago to JP. Like, that's the move that I least like, and the people in the vote in the poll also reflect that too. But yeah, I think Mane to Joao Pedro would be great, and yeah, it might be a little bit too late in terms of the fixtures, but I think with his recent form in mind, he can still perform fairly well, even against maybe Arsenal or Aston Villa. I just don't think his ceiling will be that high after Burnley at home. Hi, Dylan, start Gay or Timber? Got Gabriel and Rice. Yeah, I'd start Gay in this case. Highlanders about immortals that have to take the head of others. It's the only way to die, and the one left will be fully immortal. That's a great selling point or sort of sales pitch for the film. Does sound interesting. Van Heck or Anderson? Anderson. Hi, Dylan, is it worth a 1 week punt in Boomer to Palmer? Yeah, I think so. And I like Mbumo still, by the way, but I think Palmer is the best captaincy option overall. But yeah, what I'm going to probably do here is go through some different screens. I have gone through the majority of the questions in general. There were a few from earlier, but yeah, I think a lot of them I've already covered. Krippy passes the eye test even as a sub-impact. That is true. I agree with that. And that's why in a lot of situations recently I've talked about starting him for the FPL teams that were mentioned. I think 4 of those assists are via winning penalties. Yes, but in FPL they count, so that's why Joao Pedro is appealing. Mbumo and Lacroix out for Rodgers and O'Reilly -4. I get selling Lacroix, but for a -4 hit, buying O'Reilly, I'm not really sold on that, and I think Mbumo is worth holding on to. Which 1 or 2 max from these 4 players should I transfer out after the deadline? We'll have 5 free transfers. My preference in order are Foden, Haaland, Gay, keeping Semenyo. Plan to bring in Ray and plus 1 other differential. Oh, Man City players. Yeah, Foden is the one to sell still. Definitely. My mind hasn't changed, despite the recent start. Start 2, bench 2. Yeah, I would start Timber and possibly Wilson here. But it's a close one. But I wouldn't start 2 Arsenal defenders. So Saliba's the one to make way. DR7K34 says starting Raya, Richards, Gabriel, Chalobah, Semenyo, Bruno, Zubimendi, Thiago, Haaland, Ekitike, with Alderete, Wilson, Rodon on the bench. Looks solid. There's a case of starting Alderete over Richards, but I think you've got things in order. I'd probably start Alderete over Zubimendi. I think that's what I would do. My team this week: Verbruggen, Saliba, Gabriel, Senesi, Palmer, captain, Rice, Bruno, Rodgers, Semenyo, Haaland, DCL. Thoughts? Looks good to me. Not a big fan of your goalkeeper, but everything else looks in order, and you've got a great captaincy option, probably the best this week on paper, and your midfield is the biggest strength of your squad. If possible, I would recommend DCL to Thiago, but that probably requires a downgrade elsewhere. Maybe Saliba to Hill would make that possible. Is it worth it if I go Timber to Mark Gay? Just 1 Arsenal defender? Yes, I think so. Matthias Presler, yeah. Charles Zubimendi, Wilson to Hill, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, Sarr. Yes, I'd go for Szoboszlai over Gravenberch, but it is quite close between them. Start Timber or Mukiele. Probably Timber, but it's close. And yeah, pretty much all of these I've covered already. Start 1, Dalot or Wilson? Wilson. Would you start Chalobah or Hill? Chalobah. Could Rice to Wirtz and Timber to a cheaper defender be worth it? They could be, but I think Rice is still better than Wirtz in FPL for the next 4 game weeks. Nathan Collins over Alderete, or sell Collins for another Brentford defender? Just start Alderete. I don't think Collins starts, as you saw in my predicted lineup earlier. Would you do Krippy to Thiago for a hit? Yeah, I would, thinking of the long term. Akash says, hello Dylan, should I take a -4 hit for Timber to Hill and Guy to Thiago? I have Haaland, Ekitike, Bruno, Rice, Enzo Cunha, Anderson, Gabriel, Tarkovsky, Timber, Alderete, Vandenberg. Please suggest. Yes, I would. As I mentioned earlier, I'd take the -4 hit. Timber is still a decent FPL asset, but in order to buy Thiago, you're getting the funds necessary, and Hill offers good value, so I like the look of that. Honestly, I'm about to bench Gabriel this week, even though it's definitely foolish. Don't even believe Spurs' new manager will be good for them, but Arsenal look uncoordinated. Yeah, I agree. I think in recent weeks, Arsenal have been shaky and vulnerable, especially in the Premier League, but I'm kind of hoping and backing them to return to winning ways, and they've got a great record against Spurs and Chelsea, and they need to continue that in order to retain control of the title race, and they need to make up for the recent performances and results. Hey, this is the second stream that I watch. Really enjoyed these ones. I appreciate that, Enzo. Start Hill, Mbuma, or Timber. Mbuma, definitely. Yeah, I went through predicted lineups already. I'll go through them one more time, but maybe not giving the full commentary because I highlighted price changes, suspensions, and injuries. And yeah, it'll be a bit too much if I do that again. Timber, Mukiele, Timber. Who would you start out of Timber, Hill, and Anderson? It's going to be Timber again. Keep Bowen or sell for Thiago. I would sell for Thiago, as mentioned earlier. Good morning to Stepaki. I know this was obviously earlier, but just going through those earlier questions. Start 1, Ekitike, Timber, Alderete, Anderson. Ekitike. Have triple Arsenal defence and Sarr with blank Gameweek soon, and Raul and Thiago. Who should I prioritise to get out? I would rather prioritise getting rid of the triple Arsenal defence. So whether it's Raya, Saliba, maybe even Timber, I would get rid of one of those players. I think Saliba's the one to sell first and foremost. Gabriel's still worth keeping. Thiago's worth holding on to for sure. He's going to be a very popular purchase soon. And I think Raul Jimenez is a sell as well. Wilson, Risk, or Anderson, Defcon. I'd go for Wilson. Could see an Igor Thiago brace this week, low-key. Brighton concede a lot from strikers. Yeah, I think Thiago could do well this week, and if I didn't have him, he'd be my priority up front. Dylan Zubimendi to Rayan for a -4. I'm not sure about that, especially if you have Alderete on your bench. In that case, I'd just start him, but I do like Rayan, but not enough to buy him for a -4 hit, to be honest. Okay, so that's pretty much a catch-up. Full house here. So let me just go back to the recent messages. Okay, so yeah, I've gone through pretty much all of them now. Let's go to, yeah, quite a few have built up now over the last couple of minutes. Ahmed says Raya, Munoz, Mukiele, Gabriel, Rogers, Semenyo, Enzo, Bruno Fernandes, Thiago, Strand Larsen, Haaland, Verbruggen, Dewsbury, Hall, Gay, Goodmanson. Who to play? I think the way you've ordered it is pretty reasonable. I don't really have many qualms about the way you've done things. In fact, I'd probably go for the exact same benching order, starting 11. The captaincy would be the big debate with Haaland, Bruno Fernandes being the standouts from your 50-man squad. But yeah, Mark Gay could definitely start, but I agree with your defensive line. Munoz, Gabriel, and Mukiele. That looks good. Based on FDR over the next 10 games, can you talk us through best to target? Well, I went through the next 6, but not the next 10. And bear in mind, there are a few caveats, like, yeah, we could see, look, as you can see here with the FDR here, there are a lot of different projections, but not all these doubles will happen. So they're saying for Man City, the Palace fixture will either go into Gameweek 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. That's not going to happen. So that does inflate the FDR slightly. So let's ignore Man City and Palace, who obviously will have that double, but they also blank in 31, right? But Villa, Brentford, Leeds, Bournemouth, Liverpool, Fulham, Brighton, Sunderland, Spurs, Man United, Nottingham Forest, Burnley, West Ham, Newcastle, Everton, Chelsea, Arsenal, and Wolves. That is the FDR for the next 10 game weeks at the moment. But yeah, there's still a bit of ironing out that's needed when it comes to this fixture difficulty rating. So predicted points for the next 6 game weeks until game week 32. Ghana, Enzo Fernandez, Shada, Mbeumo, Palmer, Thiago, Ekitike are just behind the likes of Haaland, Salah, and Bruno Fernandes, who are in the top 3. So potential price changes. Rayan, Emi Martinez, Somerville, Dango Ouattara, Bruno Fernandes, Thiago, Senesi, Krupi Jr., Dewsbury Hall, Kelleher could all rise. In terms of price falls, we could see Trossard, Gyökeres, Zubimendi, Foden, Voltemada, Havertz, Cherki, also Mateus Cunha, Michael Keane, Reinders, Enzo Fernandez, and Minter. So this was the poll I put out earlier, and rolling was an option. But of course, you can see in the new poll in the live chat right now, be sure to vote as well. You can see an updated option with a -4 hit being taken to buy both Van Dijk and Joao Pedro at the expense of Mane and Timber, who I bought for double Gameweek 26. Amazing moves there, Dylan. Wilson to Semenyo is another choice, and that is in third. But yeah, a lot of you are sort of very warm towards the Van Dijk move, and I understand that completely. But Thiago to Joao Pedro, I'm not a big fan of that. The only way I buy Joao Pedro in is if I sell Mane, and in order to fund that, I need to sell Timber to Virgil van Dijk for a -4 hit. So this is a stats comparison of Joao Pedro and Thiago, two of the best forwards in FPL, but if I'm being honest, I think Thiago is the better option in the long run. But for this week specifically, I do rank Joao Pedro very highly indeed, and that's where the next section is going to come in very handy. So this is the best wildcard squad I talked about, and I made a few changes to the video when I went through this earlier, but essentially I showed you what I went for, and it had no Cole Palmer in there. So let's undo these things and go back to what I talked about. So Semenyo and Joao Pedro, I do prefer that as a duo, to be fair, compared to Palmer and Creepy Jr. But yeah, let's go to my team selection and what buying Joao Pedro and Van Dijk would mean for my lineup and also for next week, which is very important. So let's do Mane to Joao Pedro and then Timber to Van Dijk, which gives me the exact funds to make these moves. The only downside is it's for a -4 hit. So I could start Dalot, Van Dijk and Gabriel, Sanchez in goal. And yeah, Joao Pedro is definitely starting and Wilson would be on the bench. So that looks fairly decent, right? And I think with the captaincy as well, it's going to be between Haaland, Fernandes and Joao Pedro here. But that looks very solid. And then for next week, Joao Pedro's facing Arsenal away. And that's where I could even bench him for Wilson. But I do like the squad depth. You could argue it's a bit too much in the midfield and forward line. But that looks very good. And I'd start Dubravka over Sanchez. Oh yeah, this was with the Semenyo move in mind. So I can't buy Semenyo after doing this. And that would be the only concern here. So let's reset this game, actually. That would help because it says I'm over budget when I'm not. So let's do that. And then, yeah, bring in Wilson for Enzo, potentially. I don't mind starting Joao Pedro against Arsenal. I think he can do fairly well against them. And he played very well in the Carabao Cup a few weeks ago. And for Brighton last season, he scored in both matches, home and away. But yeah, that looks pretty decent. In terms of replacing Enzo Fernandez eventually, that's where I might have to be a bit creative. And that's why buying maybe Hill instead of Van Dijk would help, because it allows me to then still buy Semenyo comfortably for Enzo Fernandez. But I do like having Virgil van Dijk in this team, that's for sure. But yeah, definitely there are some question marks about buying Joao Pedro for sure at this time. Is it a bit too late? Definitely possible, but I do like how it looks for Gameweek 27, but I do have some concerns about the repercussions for Gameweek 28. Even benching Wilson against Sunderland is a little bit risky, to be quite honest with you, especially when taking a -4 hit to make that possible. But yeah, that would be a sort of sneak preview of Gameweek 28 after taking this possible -4 hit. And for Gameweek 29 as well, Enzo has a decent record against Aston Villa away, I believe, but yeah, there aren't great fixtures, to be fair. They really aren't. But having Van Dijk looks good. I think that's a long-term option. And I can always wildcard in 30 or 32 anyway, and then sell Joao Pedro and redirect that money and the funds to the midfield as well. But yeah, that would be the way I'd look at it. Yeah, and even buying Semenyo this week looks pretty handy as well. So let's see here. I'm going to compare that to buying Semenyo, because I am open to taking a -4 hit this week. I'm not fully against that. I think it could actually help me in the long run. So let's do that again. Timber to Van Dijk. The thing is, in my predictions, I have gone for 1-1 between Liverpool and Forest, and I've gone for a 2-0 Arsenal win. So based on those scoreline predictions, you would probably assume it's not really worth buying Van Dijk for a hit this week, especially if I go for the Semenyo route. But yeah, let's actually compare that or change that a little bit. So let's go to Wilson to Semenyo. And then starting him over Mane. And then doing something like that. Only 0.3 in the bank. But then I can keep Enzo Fernandez. And then, it's not Captain Gabriel again. Thank you very much. Then for Gameweek 28, if I reset this, for you twat. It's not exactly what I wanted. Okay. Reset the Gameweek. Okay, so Semenyo in. I think with Enzo, for example, this is where maybe Timber to Hill would work. I do want Van Dijk, though. I do want Van Dijk, but I could do something like this and then buy Rayan in the midfield, for example. 7.6, in an ideal world, I'd probably buy someone like Mbeumo or Wirtz. Yeah, I'm looking down the list and it's not great. If Bruno Guimaraes was available, I'd probably buy him, but that's not the case, of course. There's no pressing need to sell Enzo Fernandez in particular, to be fair. But that's something I would bear in mind. Yeah. And if not, I can use these funds to do something like Klein to Hill. And then bench Enzo. But I think I'm fine with this as well, actually. So let me know in the live chat what you prefer. If you think the Joao Pedro Van Dijk route for a -4 hit is better this week, or possibly just buying Semenyo for free now and then buying Van Dijk next week when he's facing West Ham at home. But then for Gameweek 29, yeah, that's where by that stage, if I don't roll and I just keep on using transfers like they're toys and I just keep changing them, I can do Klein to Hill and then start him against Brentford at home. There is a clash there between him and Thiago, but yeah, if I need to reinforce my squad depth a little bit, that would be another option. And there I would start Anderson over Diogo Dalot as well. So yeah, that would be a sort of insight into my transfer plans. With FPL Challenge, this is my current squad. Alisson, Munoz, Palmer captain, Salah, Joao Pedro and Haaland. And this week, all Nottingham Forest and Liverpool players will have their points doubled, which is the only reason I've got Alisson Becker between the sticks. So let's go to the scoreline predictions and top 10 captains one more time. So I've gone for Aston Villa 2, Leeds 1, Brentford 1, Brighton 1, Chelsea 2, Burnley 0, West Ham 2, Bournemouth 2, Man City 3, Newcastle 1, Crystal Palace 1, Wolves 0, Nottingham Forest 1, Liverpool 1, Sunderland 1, Fulham 0, Tottenham Hotspur 0, Arsenal 2, Everton 2, Manchester United 2. And by the way, the dice and also maybe the coin will come into play when I'm making my final decisions, because why the hell not? With my suggested team weakness and highlighted player, I'm focusing on Burnley and one of the most informed players in the league right now in Cole Palmer, but maybe he needs a penalty to make that return possible. But yeah, I think he's going to score or assist from open play here this time round. So Chelsea, Palace, Arsenal, Villa, Liverpool, Man City are in the top 6, with Newcastle in last spot. They have a terrible record against Man City, particularly at the Etihad. And that's why Haaland is second in this Campsy list, but Cole Palmer is first, with Joao Pedro, Fernandez, Rodgers, Mbeumo, Semenyo, Munoz, Salah, and Gabriel in the top 10. You could definitely replace Munoz with Igor Thiago in this Campsy list. I wouldn't really blame you for that, to be honest. And that's probably why I would change in this top 10 Campsy list. Igor Thiago to replace Daniel Munoz and maybe shift things around a little bit in the bottom tier of this list. So, the last thing I want to show you before just focusing on questions and my team for the remainder of the stream. Hold on, what is this about? Yeah, let's go back to Arsenal here. So, for Arsenal, I've gone for Odegaard and Saka, who are both yellow flagged, and we could see this 4-2-3-1 with Saka playing in a more central role, but I've gone for this, and Trossard on the left-hand side. He is no longer yellow flagged himself. With Aston Villa, Matty Cash does have a yellow flag of his own, but I think he'll start. And yeah, I think the rest kind of speaks for itself at the moment. Mings is currently first choice over Pau Torres. For Bournemouth as well, Krupi Jr. could start in this sort of second striker role behind Evanilson, and there are some concerns there about his minutes. With Brentford, Kevin Schade returns from suspension. And with Brighton, it's so difficult to predict. There could be Kadioglu as the right back and then De Kuip on the left, or maybe even Veltman right back. Who even knows at this point? The same goes for their formation. Is it a 4-3-3 with Hinchelwood alongside Belib and Gross? It's possible, but I've gone for something slightly different here with Gomez and Jorginho Rota. And for Burnley, Humphries played as left wing back recently, but he is a centre back by trade. And I've gone for Worrell, Lauren and Esteve at the back, and Hannibal Miebri to partner Ogachukwu in central midfield. Fleming up front. With Chelsea, I've gone for James at right back, and that's pretty much the biggest debate I've got in my mind. And I think the attack is quite nailed on, with Pedro Neto scored a hat-trick in the FA Cup against Hull, Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, and Joao Pedro. With Crystal Palace, Lacroix will likely miss out, and Canvo and Chadi Riyad would partner Richards in central defence. Moving on to Everton, there is one suspension here in Jake O'Brien, and Patterson is the likely replacement. Moving on to Fulham, I've gone for Kevin as the left winger over Samuel Chukwueze, and I think Robinson will start over Sessegnon. With Leeds United, the biggest controversy you could say is that Calvert-Lewin potentially doesn't start, but Nemecha has shown good form recently, and with Stack available, I think that could push Aronson into a more hybrid winger/striker role, and he would partner either Nemecha or Calvert-Lewin up front. With Liverpool, Szoboszlai is back from suspension, and the rest is what you would expect. And with Man City, I think Aït-Nouri will be the left back, and O'Reilly would play in the midfield. Semenyo is certainly worth buying this week. And with Manchester United, the biggest dilemma I've got is whether Cunha will start on the left and Mbeumo up front, or if there will be a slight change with Sesko's recent form being rewarded, and that could be a start against Everton away and Mbeumo being shifted to the left. With Newcastle, there are no qualms or concerns about this one. Anthony Gordon scored 4 goals in the Champions League, and I think he will start up front once again, with Murphy and Barnes on the wings, Voltemada as an attacking midfielder, and potentially Joelinton returning to the starting 11. With Nottingham Forest, I think Luca is the biggest concern, but with the rest, I'm quite confident about who's starting here. Or Vitor Pereira. And with Sunderland, Xhaka could return to the lineup. Reinildo Mandava is injured, so Hume would take his spot at left back, and we could see Lefay and Talby on the wings. With Tottenham Hotspur, potentially a back three with the new manager Igor Tudor, and we could see Colin Moani as a right winger because of the injuries they've got in that position to Odeberg and Kudus. With West Ham, I think there is a possible tweak here or there, especially in that defensive line. We could see Todibo displace one of Disasi or Mavropanos, but I've gone for this starting 11 for the Hammers. And for Wolves, probably a back three again, and Angel Gomez could start over one of Andre or Joao Gomez in particular, but I think Tolu and Armstrong would start up front, and then it's between Chichawa and Rodrigo Gomez as the right wing back. So that was quite extensive as well, and I won't be going through predicted lineups or top 10 captains again. So for the rest of the stream, it's just about locking in and yeah, answering your questions really, going for some different topics and stuff. Hey Dylan, hope you're doing well. Likewise, Sydney, thank you very much. If so, Rice or Mbeumo, who to bring in? I'd rather sell Mbeumo out of the two actually, but blank McFay 1 is obviously a big factor. So Timber in for DCL, Hill in for Timber. Wait, who would be in for DCL? Would that be Thiago, right? Chow or Chalobah? Yeah, I would. It's an interesting one. I'd probably sell Timber still. What you could end up doing actually is Timber to Van Dijk, either this week or the next. Bring in Hill for, yeah, maybe Chalobah because of their fixtures, but I don't mind keeping him long term. I think Chalobah could still return fairly well, but I think his output has decreased under the new manager. But yeah, I'd consider making 2 moves in your defensive line essentially. I don't really see a need to sell Rice or Mbeumo. I think your defense is the biggest concern. Zubamendi, Casemiro or Mainu? For this week, it's going to be Casemiro. Hey Dylan, play free Gabriel, Timber, Munoz, Mukiele, Hill. Yeah, Gabriel, Munoz and Mukiele. Not a bad idea to bench boost, but Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that. Will says I would avoid the hit. Fair enough. No way Crystal Palace gets the clean sheet. I wouldn't say no way, but yeah, it's not a guarantee. Will says, why would you sell Verts? Fair enough. Yo, bro, should I sell Verts for Rayan, is that? And Mark Guy for Thiago? If you need to sell Verts to fund Thiago, then I would do it, yes. But I do like Verts for the next couple. Happy birthday, Mahmoud. Should I bench boost Raya, Dubravka? Is that Gay? Gabriel, Timber, Hill, Chalobah, Bruno, Mbeumo, Rogers, Wilson, Enzo, Joao Pedro, Evanilson, and Haaland. Yeah, Evanilson's the one to sell, and I will go to Thiago if possible. It's going to be Casemiro there once again. Good to see you, Jaham. Since Lacroix is out, would it be viable to add Riyad? Not necessarily. I just think long-term he's not really an option. Pedro's captain. Haaland hasn't scored in the last 8 games versus Newcastle. Yeah, but Man City have a great record against the Toon, and I think it will be a comfortable win for them. But I get your logic, and I'm quite tempted to captain Bruno Fernandes, actually. I will do a captaincy poll fairly soon. But in terms of this poll, Joao Pedro and Van Dijk is leading now with a -4 hit. In second is Wilson to Semenyo, and in third is Klein to Van Dijk. Yeah, Thiago to Joao Pedro is just not something I'm going to be doing at this stage, so it's really a matter of the other moves that I've suggested and talked about here. Just going to have a quick look at Joao Pedro's record against Burnley and also Semenyo against Newcastle. So give me a second. And also keeping an eye out for injury updates when possible. Joao Pedro's never scored or assisted against Burnley. That's interesting. Not exactly what you want to hear when you're about to take a hit for someone. But yeah, things happen for a reason, or things can change. Wait, let's see. Here it says he has scored a goal. Yeah, in the Championship he scored 1 goal against them. So 1 in 7. Not great. That was back in the 2022-23 season for Watford. And he got booked in that game. But yeah, not particularly great there. I think Semenyo has a good record against Newcastle. It's not too shabby. So let's go for a Semenyo. He has only 1 goal in the Prem against Newcastle, but across all competitions, 2 goals and 2 assists in 8 matches. Obviously, he scored for Man City on his debut in the Carabao Cup at St James's Park. So yeah, interesting. Interesting indeed. Yeah, I mean, Liverpool's recent record against Forest isn't great as well. And also the manager bounce you could maybe sort of anticipate because of the appointment of Vitor Pereira. But yeah, not an easy one this week. I think even rolling is viable. Yeah, Liverpool's last clean sheet and last win against Forest was in 2024, but that was 2 seasons ago now, when Darwin Núñez scored a late winner. That's a throwback. Okay, so let's get the likes up to 150. It'd be greatly appreciated, and let's keep on pushing towards new goals, like 39,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. Hi, Dylan. 2 players on the bench, Richards, Mukiele, Gabriel, Dewsbury Hall, Rice. I would probably bench Dewsbury Hall and possibly Richards here. Welcome, Julie. Need your help. So bench 2, Hill, Dallo, Richards, Zubimendi, Enzo, Rice. I would bench Zubimendi and possibly Dallo. Hi, Dylan. I have a benching headache. Need to bench 2 out of Van Dijk, Ekitike, Gravenberch. I'd bench Gravenberch for sure. With the other 2, it's very close, but maybe I would bench Van Dijk. Very, very close one there. Yeah, that is true. The poll is very close, but I think the -4 hit has gone away a little bit because it was even tighter before. Should I replace Timber for anyone? Have 2 free transfers? Van Dijk seems fine as a long-term move. Yo, bro, should I sell Verts and Mark Guy for Thiago? Yes, as covered earlier. I like Klein to Van Dijk because I'm worried about Pedro's fixtures, even with his form. Yeah, I just think Klein to Van Dijk makes a lot of sense. The only problem with that, and also with the Joao Pedro move, is that it prevents me from buying Semenyo for either Enzo or Wilson, which is a big upgrade in the midfield. Hi, Dylan. Would you start Creepy Jr. and Hill over Rice and Timber? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I'd start Timber over Hill. With Croupy or Rice, I'd possibly lean towards Croupy. Yeah, possibly, but Joao Pedro does have Burnley this week, and even against Arsenal and Villa, I think he could return in one of those matches, but yeah, I do recognise that big returns we saw recently, I don't see that happening again. Looks like a tough last Gameweek for you. Minus 50% rank drop for me. Yeah, FPL can be brutal sometimes with the swings, and it was quite a disappointing week in general. Dylan, would we have the early kickoff curse for Joao Pedro? Possibly, but that's mainly applied to 12:30 kickoffs, if anything. But yeah, we have seen that broken. Even Fernandes fairly recently. I think that was against Tottenham a few weeks back. Wilson or Dewsbury Hall? For this week, probably Dewsbury Hall, but in terms of who's the better option in general, I'd still lean towards Wilson. So it just depends on the context of the question. Larsson's a decent option against Wolves, but I'm not sure if I'd captain him. Not sure how much weight I put behind individual players' records against other clubs. I don't put too much weight behind it, but it is a factor sometimes when I make transfers or decide who to start, who to bench. Why captain Haaland? Best asset in the game. I think Newcastle will concede plenty of goals. I've gone for 3-1 City. It's not locked in, though. I am tempted to switch back to Fernandes. When to play Wildcard or Limitless? There is no Limitless in FPL. That's only in UCL Fantasy. But yeah, if you're talking about UCL Fantasy, my recommendation is always using it in the league phase. But in terms of now, I'd probably say with the Limitless, use it in match day 12 and Wildcard in 13. For FPL, I think the best time to wildcard is probably around the Gameweek 30 mark. It could even be 32, which is what I'm planning at the moment. Yeah, I captain Gordon as well in UCL Fantasy. Yeah, that was a difference maker. If I do Timber to Hill, then sell Tavernier, it would leave me with 7.6. Who would you recommend? Well, in that case, Rodgers would be a great transfer for you. So yeah, still tempted by Joao Pedro. I'm not going to lie to you. Still very tempted. I'm going to go back to FPL.team, I think, and see it again. So this would be the Joao Pedro and Virgil van Dijk route, selling Timber and Mane. That's the Gameweek 28 provisional team. I would still have 2 Chelsea players, in fact 3 of them against Arsenal away with a double Blues bench. Yeah, but this does look good. I like this setup for Gameweek 27. I think probably in my case is if I had to make a transfer this week, it's probably Semenyo in for Wilson. And then in Gameweek 28, I can always sell Enzo Fernandez to one of Rayan or Elliot Anderson. I could go cheaper if I wanted. But yeah, the priority I think would be Semenyo this week and then Van Dijk in 28. I mean, that does look pretty good, to be fair. Hmm. Yeah, just having a look at some predicted lineups and also seeing if I can get any information on Twitter, but I don't see anything right now. Yeah. I think rolling could also just be the way to go, to be fair, which is a bit boring, but yeah, I think that also does make sense. And that was my plan, of course, in my team selection podcast, if you did watch it yesterday. But I am open-minded. I think there are still a few ways to improve the team ever so slightly, especially for this week. But yeah, I am open-minded about that. Interesting. So yeah. We do have 20 minutes left until the deadline. Be sure to lock in your teams. Don't leave it to chance. And I think some people had a few issues with the app before the double Gameweek 26 deadline, so you don't want to put yourself in that position. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to close this poll fairly soon and then start a captaincy one, looking at Fernandes, Palmer, Joao Pedro, and Erling Haaland as the main standouts. Not a big fan of Pedro Neto, but obviously he scored a hat-trick and his output has improved this season. But I think with Chelsea, it's going to be Palmer, Joao Pedro, Enzo, and then Pedro Neto in that order. Start 2, Rice, Brobby, and Dewsbury Hall. I'd bench Brobby at the moment. Hi Dylan, pick one midfielder and one defender. Somerville, Enzo, Rice, Rodgers, or Chalobah, Hill, Senesi, Gay, Mukiele. Very close between Rodgers and Enzo, but I'd lean towards Rodgers. And with defenders, I think this week I'd go for Chalobah, with Mukiele as a close second. Start 4 from Timber, Gabriel, Alderete, Mukiele, Munoz, Anderson. So basically, what, bench 2? I would bench, yeah, I think the same as you, yeah. Anderson and Timber. If that's Joachim Anderson, then definitely. Elliot Anderson, I'm a bit less sure, but makes sense. Would you captain Haaland or Semenyo? Well, I think Haaland's a better captaincy option in general, so that's my recommendation. But I do understand that rank can play a part, and if you're not happy with where you are, you might chase something a little bit different. Semenyo's a good option, but I think Haaland's even better. Start Martinez or Kelleher? Martinez. Bench 2, Chow, Nunes, Gabriel, Munoz, Senesi. I'd bench Chow for sure. There's no doubt about that one. And probably Senesi. Hi Dylan, would you do Gyökeres to Thiago or keep him again and roll? I would buy Thiago. Hi Dylan, would you start Krupa Jr. and Hill over Rice and Timber? Yeah, I covered this question earlier, mate. I covered it earlier, so I made my feelings clear on that one. Change Timber to Van Dijk for free. Long term, yes. I think there might actually be a negative swing this week. I think Arsenal more likely to keep a clean sheet, but just my personal prediction. Start Wilson over Timber? Yes. Should I sell Verts for... I'm guessing that's Rayan. And Mark Gear for Thiago? And I think this was also asked before, and my answer was yes. Thank you to AM8989. In order, 2 to start. Mateus Nunes, Senesi, Wilson, Anderson. I think Anderson might be one to look at, actually. Yeah, Anderson. Anderson and possibly Wilson, the 2 midfielders, with Mateus Nunes and then Senesi in that order. Hey Dylan, I just did Bruno Guimaraes to Rayan. I hope I won't suffer with it because I had Casemiro in mind. Yeah, Casemiro has been quite decent recently. He's had a few FPL moments over the years, but yeah, I think Rayan, with the fixtures and the form, could be an interesting differential, but I don't expect him to just continue what he's been doing in terms of 2 goals, 1 assist, and what, 3 appearances and 2 starts? Bro, I have Havertz. Who can I replace him with? He could be back fairly soon, but I'd definitely get rid of him. And I talked about plenty of names already, right? But yeah, I think with Kai Havertz, the main ones would be Thiago. I think long-term, he's just a 7-figure option for you. Dewsbury Hall or Lefay? Dewsbury Hall. Wilson or Dewsbury Hall? For this week, it'd be Dewsbury Hall. I would like to sell Rice, who's a better replacement, Verts or Semenyo. Semenyo. But I don't think Rice is worth selling, personally. Start Wilson, Richards or Mukiele? I would start probably Wilson. Nah, I think I'll go for Mukiele. I'd back Sunderland a little bit more in that game. The thing is, Wilson has the highest ceiling, so benching him could end up backfiring massively, or selling him, which I'm also possibly considering. I'm torn between 2 transfer options. I have 5 transfers and 0.2 in the bank. Would you sell Timber and Mane to Hill and Thiago, or Dorgu to Hill Anderson? I'd go for Thiago and Hill. Sometimes when you're conflicted like that, the best thing to do is nothing. But I think in your situation with 5 free transfers, yeah, Hill and Thiago makes a lot of sense. Anderson or Hill, who to start? If that's Elliot Anderson, I'd start him. If it's Joachim Anderson, I'd start Hill. Wilson or Dewsbury Hall? Yeah, covered that. Buy Rayan or Dango? Rayan. Pope to Petrovic, Martinez, Kelleher. If I had to pick one goalkeeper from those 4 right now, it's probably Martinez, but I talked about him being a skip in my recent Transtats podcast, and I still stand by that. Zubimendi to Ryan or Roll? I think from those options, maybe do Zubimendi to Ryan. and start Dubravka over Pope. Enzo to Palmer and Raya to goalkeeper priced at 4.4 or under. Palmer captain right away. Okay, fair enough. I mean, it looks good. I think Enzo could do well this week, though, but Palmer is definitely the standout. I just think with goalkeepers, I'd still spend a little bit more, so Roves or Pickford as your set and forget for the rest of the season. I would not sell Fernandes for Palmer, no. Do you think Mings will start now till 31? Just go for Konsa if you want that Villa defender, but I'm not a big fan of them. In terms of DEFCON and stuff, they're not really going to do too much. If you recommend starting Krupi over Rice, would you therefore recommend selling Rice and Mane for Dewsbury and Thiago? I like the Thiago move. I think that makes a lot of sense, but yeah, Timber to Hill is even better in my opinion, and I still think Rice can do well against Tottenham, but probably looking at 4 to 5 points, and he returned in all the games in terms of the reverse fixtures against upcoming opponents. Yeah, lock in, exactly, Banjo. Only 13 to 14 minutes left. Would you captain Haaland or Semenyo? Covered that. I said Haaland. Palmer, Joao Pedro, Haaland captain. Palmer, captain Joao Pedro, Haaland. It's going to be Haaland. Start Fries's Aspect, Chalobah, Timber, Gabriel, Mukiele, Ballard. Gabriel, Chalobah, and Mukiele. I mean, there is definitely a case for Ballard over Mukiele. That's up to you, but I'd diversify your defensive line. Who should I start, Hill or Mukiele? Mukiele, that's a very commonly asked question today. Captain Joao Pedro, Haaland, also covered just now. No leaks at the moment. Sell Timber for Van Dijk. Yes, but in terms of timing, I'd probably say Gameweek 28 is the best time to do it. Maybe you're the one who's got your video muted, mate. I'm not going to lie to you. Would like to sell Rice. Who will be better replacement, Wirtz or Semenyo? Yeah, I covered this as well already, Semenyo. I'll avoid the ones that I've already gone through for the sake of repetition. Start Cash, depends who you're starting him over, mate, but I don't think Villa keep a clean sheet. Szoboszlai or Senesi? Szoboszlai. Rayan or Dango on Wildcard, it's going to be Rayan. Timber to Van Dijk, 1 free transfer roll. My defense, Gabriel, Timber, Cash, Alderete, Klein. Yes, I would do that. I think it's probably best for you to make that move. And in the long run, I would also recommend Klein to Hill. And then your defensive line is fairly well set, actually. Yep, I think Anderson over Dalot makes sense. If it's Elliot Anderson, there's no doubt in my mind I would recommend it. But with Joachim Anderson, possibly. Yeah, that's a shout. But it's just Joachim Anderson's been a bit hit and miss as well. Apparently Enzo's playing left wing today. He has been playing in that position for a few games now. And I'd rather him play in a more central role. I'll probably sell Timber eventually, but maybe not right now. I'm not sure if Cherky starts this week. In my current predicted lineup, I don't have him, actually. Hi Dylan, pick 1 midfielder and 1 defender. Somerville, Enzo, Rice and Rogers, or Chalobah, Hill, Senesi, Gay and Mukiele. Yeah, I did go through this already. Rogers and Chalobah. Ivanoson to Thiago this week, Cherky and Chalobah to Wirtz, Hill next week. Yeah, I'm fine with that. And instead of Wirtz, there's also Rogers and other midfielders, but I don't know who you've got already. Hey Dylan, start one of Anderson, Elliot Anderson and Richards. Elliot Anderson. Would you start Anderson or Anderson? Elliot Anderson. Start one of Hill, Anderson or Timber. Already have Gabriel. I'd probably still go for Timber, to be fair. Start one of Wilson or Dalot. Wilson. Buenas, which free to start out of Chalobah, Gabriel, Senesi, Hill and Mukiele. Gabriel, Chalobah and Mukiele. A lot of defender questions this week and pretty much the same names all the time. So we've got 10 minutes left. Lock in your squads. And yeah, I'm going to let this poll also end. We've hit 300 votes. And Van Dijk and Joao Pedro for a -4 was the winner. Hey Dylan, would you start Wilson and Mukiele or start Van den Berg ahead of 1? Start Wilson and Mukiele despite the clash. I think that's the way to go. Who will be your Gameweek 27 captain? Okay. So let's go for the names. Frinic, Haaland, Palmer, Joao Pedro. Those are the top 4. And there we go. Yeah, Wasting, I just covered that. I said yes, I like that. But I recommended other midfielders over Wirtz potentially. Yeah, I think I'll probably sell Enzo soon. but I'm not in a rush to do so. He's still a good option. Palmer's my favourite captain. Thoughts on Bournemouth defenders? Hill's the best one, and he could be your 5th defender. Maguire or Gabriel in the first 11? Gabriel. Rice to Semenyo and Timber to Van Dijk. Looks good, but I still think Rice is worth keeping. Is it worth triple captaining João Pedro? I wouldn't triple captain him personally. I'd rather save that for a double game week for Man City. They could face Palace and Brentford at home in 36, potentially. Captain Semenyo or Enzo Fernandez? Semenyo from those two. Haaland, João Pedro or Bruno, who should I captain? From those 3, I'm very torn between Haaland and Bruno Fernandes, to be fair. I might end up changing it myself, so it's between those 2. Start Richards or Hill? Richards. Mukiele plus Krupi / Anderson and Wilson. Which 2 would you start? Mukiele and Krupi. Timber or Mukiele? Probably Timber. Anderson made an assist versus Sunderland in the first game. Fair enough. I'm not against starting him over Dalot. I think they're both pretty bad this week anyway. Would you start Krupi or Gyökeres? Krupi. Start Wilson or Cherki? Probably Cherki. You can still get something off the bench if that's the case. I would start Krupi over Timber there. Free transfer, should I do Mane to Thiago, Rice to Dango, and roll the other, or Mane to Thiago, Rice to Wirtz, and Timber to Hill? Probably the second option, but I still like Rice, just to be clear. Timber, Hill, Anderson, Alderete, Dewsbury Hall. Could you please pick 3 of these 5 to start? I would go for Alderete, Elliot Anderson, and probably Timber. Start Enzo, Virgil, and Bowen, or Somerville, Gay, and Wan-Bissaka. The first 3. João Pedro captain for me, says Harrison James. Good luck. No leaks at the moment. Start Hill, Gabriel, or Mukiele. I would start Gabriel. I did... who? To Rice, and I'm afraid that I might regret it. Yeah, I'm not sure who Chaddy is. I think it's very likely Lacroix out. It's not 100%, but I don't see him starting. Rice, Cunha, or Krupi to start? It's between Krupi and Rice. I'd lean towards Krupi, but ever so slightly. Am I crazy? Enzo as captain and Caicedo as vice? With the Caicedo vice captaincy, yes. Enzo's not a bad shout, but his recent form isn't great in terms of FPL output. I'd rather go for João Pedro or Palmer for what it's worth. Bench 1, O'Reilly, Wilson, DCL, Krupi Jr. Thank you, Dylan. I would bench DCL. Best mid long term. I already have Enzo, Rogers, Wilson, Semenyo. Don't worry about budget. Best mid long term, Fernandes. Bowen to Thiago this week? Yes. Your midfield is perfect. Well, thank you very much. I'm not sure about that one. Lol, have you saved your team? Not yet. I haven't... Let's break this down as well. Let's see what Dalot did against Everton last time out. Probably wasn't great. Yeah, he got 1 point. But he didn't start the game, to be fair. But it would have still been a 2-pointer there, all things considered. What did Anderson get against Fulham last time out? 10 points. Yeah, that was, yeah, a home match. Now it's a away tax for Mr. Joachim Andersen. But yeah, that's a good shout. That actually might push me towards starting Anderson. Not going to lie to you. But just want to check 1 or 2 more things. And that also includes any potential updates, but I haven't seen anything thus far. So for Monday, let's see. Manchester United against Everton. It's been a while. Man United 4-0 against Everton once. Yeah. Not so sure about that. They did keep quite a few clean sheets against them in 23 and 24, but not recently. Yeah, it's a close one, I think, between Man United and Everton. Very close one. Anderson versus Dalot. They literally have the exact same amount of predicted points as well. Let's get the likes up to 150. It's greatly appreciated. I've covered a lot of information here with predicted lineups, top 10 captains, answering all your questions, and yeah, I've gone through quite a lot here. Yes, I think Krupi will start. Cheers as well, Ademak, and let's get locked in, that's for sure. So I am happy with my team, relatively speaking, but I don't know, the likes of Semenyo, Van Dijk, and João Pedro are definitely crossing my mind. And if we look at this captaincy poll, Haaland is leading with João Pedro in second, Fernandes third, and Palmer in fourth. Interesting stuff there. But, yeah, 3 Arsenal players against Tottenham. I think I just don't want to jinx Arsenal. So it might just come down to that. And just taking one for the team. But yeah, difficult decisions here. Let's lock this in. João Pedro. Is it too late? Let's find out after the break. It probably is too late, to be fair. I would not be surprised if he actually blanks here and I end up regretting these moves, but yeah. Harry Wilson. Is it time to let you go? He has been pretty decent for me. But yeah. Interesting. Rice and Senesi out for cash and Rodgers have 2 free transfers. I'm going to say yes. Why am I saying yes? I like the Rodgers move, but I don't think you need to sell Rice. Senesi to cash isn't really worth it for me. Not in my opinion. Everton home form has been a bit shaky recently, I believe. It has. I also think Sunderland are very solid at the Stadium of Light, despite their recent loss to Liverpool. And yeah, I think Everton are better away from home, in fact. Yeah, 4 minutes to lock in. Start Anderson is under my responsibility. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm conflicted about that one, to be fair. Yeah, I will lock in my team. Start Anderson. Bench Timber O'Reilly. I'd bench O'Reilly still, but I wouldn't blame you if you went for the other one. Let's flip a coin. So if it lands on tails, it'll be João Pedro -4. And if it lands on heads, I will, yeah. Either roll or just do 1 free transfer. So let's... Oh, yeah. Oh, it landed on the heads. Yeah, so... is that really how I'm Two-Face? Maybe. Just relying on stupid coins for my fantasy decisions. Yeah, I'm still really tempted by Van Dijk and João Pedro. The only concern, if I quickly show you, is Gameweek 28. So, yeah, just having triple Chelsea against Arsenal away, that's my only concern there. And not having enough money to then go to Antoine Semenyo, unless I bought in Hill instead of Van Dijk this week. But, yeah, it's all a question of budget priorities and things like that. I think rolling makes a lot of sense this time round. So, yeah, I'm going to reluctantly roll and have triple Arsenal against Tottenham. Oh, dear. Am I going to jinx Arsenal? Probably. Then it's just a question of captaincy. Haaland is probably going to be my final captain, and it's always been very close between him and Fernandes for me. If I had Palmer, he'd be the one I'd go for, which I talked about a few times. Anderson Dalot is another close call. We'll see what you lot think. Haaland did win this vote. Nothing surprising there. So let's see. Who to start? Dalot and Anderson. Let's see what the people say. We've only got a few seconds left anyway. Around 50, specifically. FPL Challenge I'll go to after. There's no rush to go for it now. Cash or Richards? I'd go for Richards this week. Wilson against Sunderland at home. That's a bit risky, no? Well, yeah, Sunderland are at home. Fulham are away. Yeah, it's risky, I guess, but it is what it is. You know what? I think Semenyo, I can't lie, is very tempting to me. I think Wilson to Semenyo does really appeal to me at the moment. I mean, I've talked about that already quite a lot. Start Wilson or Gabriel, it'd be Gabriel. Danlo's actually winning. Interesting. If I did something very cheeky like Wilson to Semenyo right now, let's just see if it works. If not, then it is what it is. Then we'll see a potential reaction stream. It actually went through, didn't it? Wow, that's like literally last second. All right, so Semenyo's in my team. All right, whatever. That's fate. Let's jinx Man City. There you go. Bye-bye, Wilson. He's going to haul against Sunderland now. Enjoy the points. That was literally like... Was that not after the deadline? That's a bit... It's a bit dodgy. Yeah, I think that was made a few seconds after the deadline. But yeah, it might end up backfiring anyway. I still want to get Van Dijk if possible. I could just do Timber to Van Dijk anyway, so that's fine. I like Joao Pedro a lot, but I think my priority is Semenyo, and I'm quite happy to free hit in blank Gameweek 31. So assuming this transfer did go through, I did buy Semenyo for Wilson, which was talked about quite extensively in my best wildcard squad and my team selection videos, which were both published yesterday. Yes, time, definitely. Semenyo Hall inbound. Well, unfortunately, my FPL luck isn't as good as my UCL fantasy one, but I'm hoping for the best. I did the same and got Semenyo. Yeah, I like the move a lot. And look, Wilson is still a quality FPL asset, but yeah, Semenyo's been very impressive. I've wanted him for a while. Start Wilson, Mukiele, or Anderson. From those three, probably Mukiele. Sell Chow or Timber to afford Thiago. I'd rather sell Chow. Maybe go from him to Hill. And you can always do Timber to Van Dijk in the weeks to come. Should I captain Joao Pedro? He was 4th in my list. So if you got one of Palmer, Haaland, or French, then yeah, I think one of those would be better. But yeah, I ended up captaining Haaland myself, to be fair. But Palmer's my favourite. Start Raul or Anderson? Probably Anderson. I mean, Raul has the highest ceiling, I guess, but yeah, nothing spectacular. Rice to Shard is interesting. I personally don't agree with it, but all the best to you. Is captaining Palmer a risk? Slightly, I guess, but I think it's a good captaincy choice. My favourite one for this week. And yes, we are locked indeed. H-Army and Genius Gamer. Thank you, Punjabi. As you say, may we all do well. Also, thanks to Awali. H-Army says, I hate last-minute changes. Could have made 3, but made 1. Bowen to Thiago, going to hide for the West Ham game now. Yeah, I don't like making last-minute changes, but that's a result of overthinking, and because I'm answering hundreds of questions and also trying to provide as much information as possible, I, in terms of like last-minute decisions and thinking of things, I don't give myself maybe enough time to process what I actually want to do, so then it causes overthinking, but yeah, I'm quite happy with Semenyo in for Wilson, and I think the midfield is, I've been saying this for weeks and months now, right? I want to put more money in this position. So I think what I've done is probably good from a structural perspective, instead of buying Joao Pedro up front for Mane, when just literally last week I sold Ekitike for Mane, so I'm kind of backtracking already if I did that. And I'm probably a bit too late to the Joao Pedro party anyway. And then having 3 Chelsea players against Arsenal away is just far from ideal. But maybe the Blues end up getting a result. Who knows at this point? I agree, Semenyo is currently better than Wilson, but FPL is a funny game, isn't it? Lol, where did the flipping coin come from, Dylan? I'm not sure. I've done it for the odd year or two now. And I rarely do it, but this season, whenever I've flipped the coin, if I actually followed the advice, I ended up gaining points from it, so maybe I should do that. I don't think that transfer will come in confirm after the refresh. Yeah, if there is a reaction stream tonight, I'll go through it, but to be honest with you, the fact that it went to the team selection screen to this one and it shows Semenyo in it, I'm fairly confident the transfer went through. I wish I went for Wilson to Semenyo now. Well, normally people say, oh, if Dylan bought him, that means it's not a good thing. He's going to blank, so who knows at this point. Captain Rogers, all the best with that one. I saw a few Rogers captainers in the building. Deadline has passed. Good luck, everybody. Yes, a 1:30 PM UK deadline. Good luck as well to Ali B07. Captain Bruno and Pedro Weiss look solid. I was tempted by Bruno. Wilson will blank for sure. I'm not entirely convinced about that, to be fair. I think you always have a bit of like fear when you sell a player or bench them that they're going to end up hauling. It's one of the worst feelings when they actually do. Thanks, Dylan. Great stream. Good luck. Thank you very much, Ken Back. H-Army says, I'm doing surgery to my midfield next week. Also kind of avoided Chelsea. Good luck, mate. Likewise, I'm not going to lie. When I first saw the first couple of words, I was kind of worried. But yeah, thankfully it's an FPL conundrum instead. Yeah, I avoided Chelsea as well, which... well, I've got Sanchez and Enzo. That's not bad, right? But I'm not all in with a triple up. So yeah, FPL challenge, it's pretty much what I talked about earlier and in my team selection yesterday. Nothing fancy. Alisson, Munoz, Palmer captain, Salah, Joao Pedro and Haaland. I think what I might end up doing is buying Van Dijk and then going for a different goalkeeper. But I could just make full use of the triple... Was it the double points to to Liverpool and Forest players? So that's where I can just go all in on Liverpool and maybe do something like that. But I am open to changing my goalkeeper as well. But that's my current thinking when it comes to FPL Challenge. And at least in this universe, I've got Palmer and João Pedro, which looks pretty handy. Wait until Sunderland score a goal from long throw set piece, but it's Anderson accidentally scoring a header in his own net. Well, I wouldn't mind that because he's on my bench. So yeah, this week it's called Old Foes. Forest and Liverpool players are awarded double points. You can pick 3 players per club, unlimited budget. So yeah, that's all covered. My scoreline predictions as well. I've gone through virtually every single question. And yeah, just ensured that people saw my thoughts on the best players to start this week. Captaincy dilemmas, chip strategy, even team-specific questions like, oh, should I bench this player? Should I do this? Or whatever it is. What transfer should I make? Should I roll? That was all covered. And yeah, I made one late move, Wilson to Semenyo, if it actually went through, which I believe it did. And FPL Challenge is closer to being locked now, but maybe there'll be a change between the sticks. And usually I don't really get back to FPL Challenge in terms of like tinkering after the deadline. But yeah, who knows? Maybe this time I actually will and give FPL Challenge a bit more credit. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, like this stream, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date on my content, both FPL and UCL Fantasy. There will be more content for the Champions League fairly soon because we have another deadline on Tuesday, and for FPL there's going to be an earlier one on Friday. So yeah, it's going to be a bit sooner than usual and very quick turnarounds for both fantasy formats, but I'll do my very best to get all the content up for you with those deadline streams, possibly a reaction stream tonight. I'll let you know about that one, but we do have a game at 8 PM between Man City and Newcastle. There's also the best limitless and wildcard squads, which I want to do for match day 10, my team selection, and for FPL, the plan is to do a transfer tips, a wildcard squad, and yet another team selection, but for a different fantasy format. Hey Dylan, I captained João Pedro. He was fourth on my list, so I do like him as an option. He has never scored or assisted against Burnley. From my perspective, because I didn't buy him in, ultimately, I hope he does blank, but obviously for your sake, I wish you the best. But yeah, from a selfish perspective, I am hoping that Palmer and João Pedro are quiet. My challenge is similar. Bar Sanchez in goal, Ekitike up top. Yeah, makes sense. I think Ekitike is a good shout, but I think Forest Liverpool will be quite low scoring. Yeah, I've got Mohamed Salah in there. Best of luck, Dylan and everyone. Thank you, Harrison James. Likewise to you and everybody watching. Twisted Parky says, I bought in Thiago for DCL last seconds and Hill for Chow, but last on the bench. So, defense of Timber, Gabriel, Chalobah. I don't really blame you for that. I think with Hill, yeah, I would have put Hill over Van der Ven in the pecking order, but I wouldn't have started him over Gabriel, Timber, or Chalobah. Thank you, Mina. Very kind of you. Great stream as always. How about no easy? And by the way, Kai Havertz scores again against Chelsea. Thank you very much. So yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to everyone. I'll see you very soon for more FPL and UCL fantasy content. Take care. Enjoy the football. I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 27 and the rest of the season. And keep your eyes peeled for UCL fantasy content.